The last telegram of the Rebbe, I don't know why, Rabbi Groner called me. It was the middle of the day. I should come and prepare. I didn't want to ask him why the guy's not doing it, whatever it is. I came back. I was working that time in Williamsburg. I came back and I prepared based on what the Rebbe had spoken that time. A normal typed up without the Rebbe having the posik we know already from different mechtavim. Punkt, that telegram, the Rebbe was Magia, added tons of stuff.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe Hirshel, how are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome.
So there's a lot that I want to discuss with you, with the Hanachos, with my Marim, Mechtavim Klalim. There's a lot of involvement that you had. I guess a little bit behind the scenes. I don't know how many people know about it, so therefore I'm glad that you're here. My first question for you is, where were you coming from? When did you get to the Rebbe? How did that happen?
Yes, I was born in Paris. I lived in Aubervilliers. At the age of 5, I moved to a little shtetl called Yer, walking 25 minutes from the yeshiva in Brunois. In the end of Tovshin Lamed Aleph, 1971, I went to the Rebbe. Was officially I was going for Chedesh Tishri Tovshin Lamed Beis. I came here Chovov Elul. It was Shnas Hashivim. I stayed here. Lamed Beis, Lamed Gimel. I was in Morristown. About Kislev Tovshin Lamed Daled, I was already in Crown Heights, and that's when I started getting involved a little bit in the Sichos. In the building of 784, 788, the buildings next to 770. Upstairs there was an office. I think later was used by Yossi Kazen, Oliver Sholem. And this was the office of the Sichos, and I would type up here and there the Chavrei Havad Lanoch Satmimim, the old one, would bring a Sicha that they finally got ready to type and to publicize it. They asked me to type it.
So what was the Seder? So the Rebbe verbringt on Shabbos, let's say. So in this Chazara, when is this all happening?
No, in those years, Shabbos verbringens were about, for instance, Lamed Beis, just Shabbos Mevorchim, maybe one more, it has Tammuz Lamed Beis, the day of the Bris Friedrich Rebbe. Mostly, there weren't so many verbringens in the year. Officially, each year had someone who would write the Hanachos of that year. When I finally came to the Rebbe, I was in Morristown. I was so happy waiting to come into New York. Once in 4 weeks, we came in for Shabbos Mevorchim. I was sure I'm coming in here. I'll get the Hanocha. I'll be able to learn the Verbringen. And when I would come in here, nothing came out yet. The same thing, I guess, was Lamed Gimel. And those were the guys writing the Shabbos Verbringen. The week the Verbringen, they had someone...
You're saying they weren't producing it properly?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There was this in those years. There was a weakness in the Hanachos.
Yes, and the weekday verbringens, I guess someone would write it. In those years, there were no cassette recorders. It was just a big reel-to-reel. Wasn't easy to write it down, and after you wrote it down, you couldn't listen over because it would ruin again the reel-to-reel tape. And then someone else, not from the ones who wrote the Shabbos Verbringens, would look over the Sicha, fix it. It was called making trains, like turning around the words the Rebbe said here to there, in order something that was spoken with a nigun should be able to be readable a little bit when it's on text. And then they would type it up. Before it used to be on stencil. Stencil is something that you typed on it, you had typed strong enough so it made holes in the stencil, and then that stencil, you were able to fix it. You had a kind of little liquid that you could fix. It wasn't so easy. That you would put on the machine and printed, the ink would go through the holes.
So that's like the comping device.
That's, yeah. What I mean to say, wasn't offset.
Mm-hmm.
When I came, it was about, as I said, Kislev Tovshin Lamed Daled. At that time, I still remember Alec Friedman, Rebbe Kain Friedman, which is a shliach in Tzfas now, was sitting together with Reb Mendel Rifkin, which was for years a shliach, the Luderov in Eretz Yisrael in Lud, and they were sitting, at that time this was Kislev, trying to write the Hanocha of Shabbos Neyach from that year. I started typing a little bit. Rabbi Gavril Shapiro would give me a sicha that it's ready. Could you please type it? Of course.
1 second. So these people that are writing the Hanachos would write it down by hand.
Some of them by hand and some with a typewriter. Those sichas, of course, were all mostly by hand, or it depends if the guy who typed from the tape was an Israeli guy that knew how to type, so maybe it was typed, but a lot of them were by hand.
So you started typing these Hanachos.
He would ask me, here's a Verbring, it's ready. If you type it up, it will come out. If I wouldn't type it, it would go to what you call Gnize, and that Sicha would never come out. Anyhow, by the end, I'm sorry. That same year, Tovshin Lamed Daled, I believe Rebbe Levin got married Tovshin Lamed Daled. Sorry,
you don't have to go into all the details, but basically, till the Chafs, Rebbe would write regular Hanachos, and then there was the Chafs and the early Lamas, there's like this Chalishus, right? It's not...
No, that's not my line. I wasn't there. If you want to know more about the history of the previous years, that you would have to ask someone else who has it written down. I came here end of Lamed Aleph. After all, Rabbi wrote the Hanachos for at least 10 years. I believe Chav Gimel, when he started doing Sefer Erchim, he got more busy. Also, Likud Sichos. So he was doing less. The story goes that Rebbe Yeichel, the old man Rabbi Simpson, walked over to Rabbi like being upset why he was the official Chazer, why you're not giving out writing the Maimorim. So Rabbi told them, how many years did you write by the Rebbe Rashab? He wrote Hanachos, I think, Tov Reish Samach Vov. He only wrote 1 or 2 years. I already did 10 years. You know, it's people don't understand. Throughout the years of the Bochrim, every year or so was a different group of Bochrim that were making the Hanachos. And even then, not much came out. Of course, just in the beginning, after the revolution of the Bochrim, Tovshin Chavov, so I guess Chavov, Chav Zayin, Chav Ches came out, but then later, I guess, the Gevon Schwacher. The Maimorim, at that time already, when Rebbe Levin, I think, got married Lamed Daled, so Reb Tzvi Yichil Grimbla, Tzvi Grimbla from Argentina, started writing the Maimorim. At that same year, David Feldman used to write Hanachos, Tegen Kotzer of Verbringen. I think he only made like 6 copies. He had 6 people. How big was the whole Lubavitch? 6 people that took from him a copy. One of them got a copy was the Rebbe. I think Rabbi Groner used to call it, or maybe the Rebbe, the Kolir Hanachos, because practically sometimes it was on different color paper, whatever you were able to get for cheap paper you couldn't get, just it was expensive. Sometimes maybe even, I don't know, in the same Sicha was every page a different color of paper. By the end of Tovshin, by the beginning of Tovshin Lamed Hey, the Vad Hanachos Atmimim, the original Vad Hanachos Atmimim, I think Rabbi Gavril Shapiro, asked David Feldman that in addition to write the teichen, which wouldn't take that much time, was a short teichen, it's Lashon Kodesh, he should also write a Hanocha in Yiddish with all the details, a lengthy Hanocha, so they could use for Hanochas Atmimim. There was nobody else at that time that was making the Hanochas. David Feldman agreed. They, of course, he wasn't going to do it himself, so they had 3 people, Rabbi David Feldman and Rabbi Baruch Pevsner, who was a shlich in Erzrol later, and now is in Paris, and Rabbi David Meisher Oledot. They broke up, the Verbringen, I think Rabbi Oledot would write the Rashi Sichos, and like this, they were doing all the Shabbos, of course, all the Shabbos Verbringens. Also in Yiddish, everything was written, like a Verbringer would be 40, 50 written pages.
Were they the Chezrim also?
They knew the Verbringer. There's all people that knew, but most probably they said by the Verbringer and took Nakudas, but they knew the Verbringer also, of course.
Right.
David Feldman knew the whole Verbringer, Rabbi Von Borch knew the whole Verbringer, and David Oledot has a very good head, of course. But he was based on Chazorah. And Chazorah not always was the same level of Chazorah, but we're not talking about that. Like this, they started writing Verbringers of Tovshin Lamed Hey, and Rabbi Elkan, of course, came. He said we should work in cooperation because he wanted to rewrite the Verbringen. His style of writing is much higher than anybody, but it takes him longer. Lepel, that throughout the year Lamed Hey, most of Verbringens did not come out. They wrote the whole year, all the Shabbos, Verbringens, and Yom Tov. I believe most of them didn't come out. What you see now, that there's in Sichos Kodesh a book of Tovshin Lamed Hey, a lot of them were Nishlem after Tovshin Lamed Vov, when we started the new Vada Nochsat Mimim. We every time did a Verbringen from the year before.
Why did they write them and not put them out?
Why didn't they come out? Whatever, people, for sure it wasn't the fault of the 3 people that wrote Hanachos.
There was other Menias V'Kuvim.
Just Rabbi Yel wanted to work on them, but Rabbi Yel it takes longer. But there is a Vada Nochsat Mimim which was supposed to take care of it. It's not so simple said. By the end of Tovshin Lamed Hey, beginning of Lamed Vov, and at that time also, since we had hoped maybe the Verbringers will come out, so we prepared also some Marmekemis. I remember me and Rabbi David Feldman being in Chevetere, which had a nice library. This was before the library in Tzach. There was a second good library kind of that opened up. We had no Sforim, so we'd be in the library in Chevetere to make a little bit Marmekemis. And now, it seems after working a whole year, it took a lot of time from David Feldman. By the beginning of Lamed Vov, he notified the Vada Nochsat Mimim that he is not going to continue to make any more Hanachos. He doesn't want to waste his time. He doesn't have time with Zabochas, set and learn, Chassidus, Nigle. That's it. That means that in a certain sense, Hanachos Mimim is over. At that time also, the same period of time, the beginning of Lamed Vov, I think it was Shvat, the Rebbe announced he's sending Shluchim to Eretz Yisrael. I think the first Kvutz of Shluchim, Yud Shvat, the Rebbe announced. And one of them that was picked was Avram Baruch Pevsner. In other words, that meant that that's it. There is nobody anymore here that is going to write the Hanachos. This was a Friday night, I think 1418. I don't remember which building exactly my apartment was. It was the Friday night of Shabbos Mishpotim, Mevorcha Machedesh Od Rishon Tovshin Lamed Vov, 1976. On the same floor in the apartment, there was another room where my good friend Rabbi Yitzchak Posner, they called him Iki Posner, I think he's in Chicago, Illinois today, a shliach. Kalman Shor was also a good friend of mine, still from before, someone else there. And somehow, when I came at night, whatever, a shmuz, I don't want to say another word, we started talking, and they're all being very upset. What's going on? Why are Sichos not coming out? And when I gave him a report, the truth, what's going on, they were shocked. They were very upset. And on the spot, a decision was made that we are starting to give out the Sichos from this Shabbos. This is Friday night, late at night, from this Shabbos. The fact we don't have who is going to write the Sichos. David is not writing anymore in Yiddish. So we said we'll take David Feldman's Hanocha in Lashon Kodesh, and we'll take a few guys, and they'll.
So he was still writing Lashon Kodesh, even though he wasn't.
No, of course, the Teichen he continued. Teichen. Yeah, sure, yeah, whatever it's called, a Teichen, whatever was more than a Teichen, but and Kach have that right Motzei Shabbos we took. As soon as David Feldman had 1 page or 2 pages ready, we sat down, I think, Reb Sholem Charitonov, which was a Chazer himself, my good friend, Reb Yankiv Meisher Wahlberg, also I knew him from Morristown, had a very good head, and I think also Reuven Matzov, even though he was very young, he's today in Paris, in Lishke, and they started writing the Hanocha in Yiddish. They all knew the Verbringen very well also, but here they have a Teichen already. It's much more than having the Kudas from Chazorah. And you write it out in the language you write down Hanocha. And I had a typewriter there, was not only Hermes, it was called the Hermes Ambassador. The regular good Hermes typewriter was Hermes 3000. The old typewriters were Olivetti. There's a Shtusim. Olivetti didn't have nice ACS, but the Hermes was the one that we used to use, and I had Hermes Ambassador. At that time already, by Tovshin Lamed Hey around, already was invented the new ribbon. It's a one-time ribbon, unlike the old ribbons that were cotton, that they keep finishing and going back, so the ACs are not sharp. Those were a kind of a ribbon that every letter you type, it uses one time, and the ribbon continues. Once it's finished, you have to change the ribbon, and then you're able to print from it offset, because it's very sharp. The original is very sharp. And also, I typed the Sichei. I used the office there, happened to be the beginning of Tovshin Lamed Vov. I went upstairs in the building and I found our office, a big storage room, belonged to Rabbi Krinsky, to Lubavitch. It had no door on it even, and was all packed, ungeworfen with storage, with stuff that belonged to Lubavitch. I made myself a little space on a desk without permission, and I sat down there to do some work. I even gave out on my own without asking anybody a Sichei of, I think, Shchedesh Cheshvan Lamed Vov. Then when we decided to start the new Sichos, they all went up to my quote-unquote office. They wrote, there was a little space, and I typed it. If I'm not mistaken, by Tuesday, we finished, and I gave the Hanocha to the person in charge of the printing of the Sichos, which was Rabbi Yitzchak Tenenbaum from the Matzah Bakery, my good friend. And he sent it to print. At that time, the printing was Manhattan, right where you cross the first stop when you come to Manhattan, was an offset place. And he came back. They were selling it in 770 upstairs, if you know, maybe till now in the beam of Kriyas Atera, because he used to be the one for years selling the Sichos. There was a good locker he owned there underneath the beam, is in Aslan, the beam of Kriyas Atera. He was selling, the Elam jumped on the Sichei. It was never in history that 3-4 days after a Verbringen, there is, and I think the Sichei altogether costed 25 cents or whatever it was. After he finished selling, there was some exchange of words. It was no choice, and he was notified that there is no more the old Vad. There is a new Vad, Hanoch Satmim.
The one that you guys were doing?
Yes.
So
the question was also...
I have a question. There was is any hisyachos from the Rebbe about the Hanachos coming out, not coming out, like what the Rebbe didn't involve in that?
Just I'll say it now, that in the time when we started the new Hanoch Satmimim, till then...
I'm asking before then.
Yeah. So the Rebbe would complain a lot of times with the Verbringen. The expression was kind of mod gerät und mit nicht verschrieben. The Rebbe said he spoke something and it's not written down. The Rebbe was upset. I could say that from when our Sichos started, the Rebbe changed the tune. The tune used to be what gerät, verschrieben, angedruckt, I spoke, it was written, printed, bound in a book, put on the shelf, and nobody paid attention to whatever I said there. They should have asked a question. Usually there was no question on the Rebbe, obviously, but that's what the Rebbe said, that what he said is, there's a question that, but at that time, so there we go, we told them that there's going to be a new Hanachos Atmim, but who's going to write the Sichos? Between Shabbos Mishpotim to next Shabbos Verbringen, I was walking with Rabbi David Feldman to his apartment. It was a boch, of course, I think on Crown Street. And suddenly, I knew he was very, very upset. There was no way to talk to him about coming back to write the Sichos. But at that point, suddenly he told me, he says, Hirshel, since already this thing broke out, so I'm joining you. I can't say over how my heart was jumping, dancing from joy. That Baruch Hashem, and Taka from Shabbos, Vayakel, Voch Machelish Adar Sheni, he came upstairs, and we started working. He would write the Hanachos, mostly. Rabbi David Odot was supposed to do the Rashi. For a short time, he did the Rashi Sichos. And I, together with Yankiv Meishe Wahlberg, I mixed up Yankiv Shleim and Goldberg, Yankiv Meishe Wahlberg would do the Marmikemis, and later on was mostly me. The same thing, I did the Marmikemis, and the Sichos, also under my Morim. We're talking about simple Marmikemis. When you write a Maimer, obviously the Chassidus, which the Rebbe is basing the Maimer, the person writes the Maimer, is supposed to know. But all other side things that are mentioned, now making the Marmikemis...
How do you make Marmikemis? Yeah, how does that work?
Making the Marmikemis...
Today we know how to make Marmikemis.
Yeah.
You Google it. AI.
Forget about it. Hey, today we have Eitzara Chochmeh. We have many books. In our time, there was, for Marmikemis and Psukim, there was a book, it still exists, called Concordancia. How do you say it in English?
I know Concordancia.
Whatever. I think, actually, I don't believe even it was made by a Yid. I think it was made by a non-Jew. But the whole
I have one.
Is based on, it's interesting. I still keep that book. It's one of the interesting books from the olden times. The mile of that book is that you could find every word based on the sheresh. As we all know, the Rebbe usually did not repeat psukim the way they are in Chumash or Nach. The Rebbe even said once explanation for it. Maybe because Balpeh, he doesn't want to say.
The Rebbe said it himself?
I think the Rebbe said, that's what I heard. I don't remember if it was in my time. So we're able to find, just for a joke, besides one posik that simply we had no clue. There was a posik that says, Le nikar shua lifnei dal. But it's a posik that today, I'm sure you know that posik. But we didn't know that posik, and when you hear the tape or whatever it is, it sounded, to me at least, maybe Le nikad shul lifnei dog. And therefore, there was no way to find it. I remember a story, I always test Bochim. I tell them, what's the first half posik? Voy yom of mei ve'esrim shona. I asked them, what's the first half posik of that posik? I'm not going to test you.
Yeah. Okay,
anyhow, so over there it says, B'shagom hu boso, voy yom of mei ve'esrim shona. On the tape, there was someone once who wrote a shtickle sicha from the tape, and not being able to understand what the Rebbe says, he thought the Rebbe is saying, and he put a question mark, b'jargon, he put a question mark. That could happen, of course. Who knew psukim? The Rebbe once said about the Ragat that the way he would know where a posik is because he was brought in Gemara Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so this was psukim. This was Baruch Hashem, we had a concordancia. When it comes to Maimori Chazal, there's a 3-volume book called Michlel HaMaimorim VaPizgomim that already existed before my time. We also bought those 3 for him. The only problem is that in this forum, you have to know the Lashon of the Chazal. It's alphabetically ordered, but you have to know the sentence. And since the Rebbe usually would not say over Chazal
The whole thing.
the whole thing or the sentence, so it was quite hard. Later on, we found out there was another book, Eitzer Pisgom Chazal, I think, in downstairs in the Cheder Shein, in the library of Cheder Shein, the library of downstairs 770. But we at that time didn't know about it. So we had Michal Morim Pisgom, but then we had another book called Eitzer Pisgom Chazal, I think it was called. It was called Eitzer Agoda. That one was set up also 3 volumes according to topics. So you would go through the whole topic, or this erech or another erech. Maybe you were able to find. It wasn't easy. Obviously, the encyclopedia you have for the past 30 years or so or more, and Zayar didn't exist. At least we didn't know. I do remember that what you call today Eitzer HaChochma was Shalsa Tshuva's Bar-Ilan University, but it was something people didn't have. Only, I think, Yeshiva University here had that program. I remember that Meisha Winner, the Mechaber of Hadar Sponim Zoken, would go to them to get stuff, and for them it was a lot of money, but you needed one word. They would print out 50 pages you had to pay, because that word was mentioned, even though not necessarily you needed everything. And so Mekimius Chazal was much harder. Just rarely, when it was a very hard Chazal, I would go up to the library upstairs in the Kelul, in the back of 770. They had a very good library, which was donated by the Balkari of Mika Slavin, Michal Slavin, Lil Nishmas, his father, that passed away, I think, Lamed Beis, in an accident. And there was a lot of good Sforim, but we didn't really have access there. But only from time to time. There was also no time. The Sichos, everything was done under pressure of time to finish.
Also, the Mamikimus weren't done like mamish everything.
No, whatever we knew.
Yeah, I'm saying
obviously things that the Rebbe didn't say, this is state or the Apostle, we didn't even try to.
The Rebbe sometimes helped you, because in the Sichos the Rebbe will say state in Sifri. Like very often in the Sichos the Rebbe says where it is, right?
Yeah, but if the Rebbe would say in Sifri, first of all, you had to have a Sifri. Tirskanim, which Safro, Sifri, and how do you find it there? It's not always on the posik.
Mm-hmm.
Concerning here I have, we talked before about the Chazal. So Moshel, here in Asicha, it's Kislev Tovshin Lamed Zayin, the Rebbe quoted the Chazal, the way the Rebbe said it on the tape, Lebora Kodesh Baruch Hu Devrechet Be'elomer Levatole. According to the Michla Maimor of Pisgomim, we found the expression Lebora Kodesh Baruch Hu Devrechet Levatole, and he marks where it says is in Bamidbar Rabba, in Medrash Rabba. Happened to be that Verbringen, after it was printed, the Rebbe looked it over and made a few corrections. Not Magia, but he made here and there.
That happened often?
Sometimes, not so many times, no. Throughout all those years, it could be, I don't know, a few times, we were so happy. And the Rebbe fixed simply Shabbos, Ayin Zayin Beis. Here you have a Gemara. The Gemara, it says, so the expression was different. That's why I couldn't find it in the Michlel. And now, so this is how we have to remind all other Marmakemis, where do we look for them? The first Mafteach and Lekut Sichos was given out by Rabbi Munchein at the end of Lamed Vov, which is the end of a year already we're doing Sichos. The second volume came out erst in 1980, Tovshim Mem. Concerning, so there was nowhere to look. Like this, you could find where the Rebbe Tzeichels. There is a shtickle Mafteach in the back of Lekut Sichos Chelek Dalet, but this is not a Mafteach that Bechlal could be considered a Mafteach. It's like now, when it came to Chassidus, I think the only Mafteach.
1 second. The Hanachos before your times also had Man Bekamis?
Yeah, they had
the
same thing.
Rebbe would write Man Bekamis, or he would give it to someone else?
You're talking about Hanachos at Mimim? Whoever worked that time would maybe it was Rabbi Gavril Shapiro, would look up and in Michal Moron V'Pisgom, the same thing again, you know. The thing was also that besides looking at Maramokim, you have to make sure that what you write in the Sicha says in the Pasuk. The Rebbe once Tovshin Lamed Hey was screaming about Breishis Aleph Aleph. We learned from the Rebbe, we never tzeichen Maramokim without looking inside. The Rebbe always would look inside. He never tzeichen, even though he tzeichen Mirnik Maramokim, he knew all of them, but he asked to check the maps. Unless he would ask for Rebbe Groner to take out a book from the Shafe, if Rebbe Groner was there. The Rebbe don't say, we learned from the Rebbe. Obviously, we knew most of Marmekemis of Psukim the Rebbe said, like Vasukis Teishu, all the Psukim the Rebbe said, we knew them already. We're there in the Chumash from so many times Zeichening, but never did I at least Zeichen Maramokim without looking inside. When it came to Chassidus, there was actually much harder. I think there was one Maftech, a red big book was printed that the Rebbe had of there, the Maftechis he gave out Tovshim Beis and whatever Chassidus he had in the time when he made that Maftech. Maybe Tovshim Yud, another few of the Sforim about Maftechis, Maftech in Yonim. Of course, we would ask someone like Rabbi Yale, wasn't so easy to bother for things like this. Shalom Charitonov, maybe. Now, concerning asking the Rebbe, I'll finish Marmkemis, I'll go back to the technical. Marmkemis, in general, of course, you didn't ask the Rebbe Marmkemis. Not only Marmkemis didn't ask the Rebbe, if you had a question, if you were able to get away without asking the Rebbe, we, of course, did not, the people that write Hanocha did not ask. Of course, not Marmkemis, it doesn't come in consideration. There were rarely times that either we asked the Rebbe, which means we didn't ask where this says, we gave you in that page where the thing it says there with a question mark on the side, asking Rabbi Groner to show to the Rebbe, you know, and important things. And sometimes it happened after the thing was printed and something was saying there and Marmokim either was wrong or missing and the Rebbe wrote on the side. For instance, there are certain Marmokim that we had no choice, like it's not just the Rebbe says a posik or something, Amsar Chazal. By the way, like in the Brocha or what, that the famous Rebbe's instruction that if you don't find, take it out. This was, for instance, the Rebbe said in the Sichos of Shabbos Matzemaser, Shchede Shov Lamed Zayin, the Rebbe said, steht, befrat, he spoke about Bikasha Kotzvoch Las Chizkiyahu Moshiach, the famous Gemara, and then the Rebbe said, he continued, finishing the Sichos, befrat, it says, Tonet ve Cheskia, Moshiach Cheskia Shmei, as the name of Moshiach is Moshiach, that it says, Dvei Cheskia, that Moshiach, his name is Cheskia, that Moshiach's name is Cheskia. Of course, in the Gemara Sanhedrin, we didn't find anything. We asked something the Rebbe, but that page we had to give in. Just that page itself, the way it was ready to be printed, no connection, beginning, end. And the Rebbe there added a bunch of lines. It's all, most probably today, everything is publicized. A whole thing just to leave what he said, but he added that it's in Kisva Arizal with the whole explanation to bring out that there is, why he said Tonet Vecheskia, that it should be like this.
Basically, there is a market for it. There is a market for it.
No, he says, he's using the expression, it's based on the Kisva Arizal, but he's using, it doesn't say in Gemara Sanhedrin, famous Sugya, he's using Beloshen of Sanhedrin. For instance, in a Maimer, this is very interesting, this is already a Maramokim that they wrote, in a Maimer, Meishe Kibul Teira, I think Shabbos Nosei, Tovshin Lamed Ches. So the Rebbe says that Shisha Sidrei Mishneh is, they come out from Shisha Mides, the 6 spheres of Lamailo, as the Alter Rebbe brings in the Hagoy in Tanya. And they simply ask the Rebbe, which Hagoy, you know? Not everyone was Boki in Tanya. And the Rebbe says, no, I could tell you one thing. Today, most people the people who worked in the Rebbe Sichos, of course, know the Tanya upside down. And yeah, the Rebbe, but it couldn't, maybe it doesn't say exactly, I don't know, I didn't look it up. Now, the Rebbe answered, Hashniya b'seif Perek Mem. I'm referring to the second Hagor in the end of Perek Mem. There's a lot of Hagors there. Like there was a mimer of Vayakil Lamed Ches. And they're interesting enough. This was a week to verbringen. It's the same like that one, the whole Tovshin Lamed Ches. The Rebbe mentioned about something. He said, Ki yadua the Birbaze in Biur HaZeir. As known the explanation in Biur HaZeir, means the book Biur HaZeir. Writing the Hanoche, they must have found that it was easier in the Biur HaZeir of the Tzemach Tzedek, and that's what they say. And they wrote the mimer, Ki mevur be Biur HaZeir la Tzemach Tzedek, and they put a footnote which page. But the Rebbe answered, Bechivun leizkarti la Tzemach Tzedek, ki nimtzo v'keidem be Biur HaZeir stam, beisof shnitzler de admorim tzoy. The Rebbe says, on purpose, I did not say that I'm referring to the Biur HaZeir Tzemach Tzedek, because this inyan already exists on an earlier source in Biur HaZeir of the Mittel Rebbe, which Rebbe said the Biur HaZeir Mittel Rebbe is called Biur HaZeir Stam, means the Mittel Rebbe. And that's why he said Biur HaZeir. And the Biur HaZeir was printed by the Mittel Rebbe. Here is, for instance, a very, very interesting thing that happened. This was Sichos, also a week there from the tape. In Sichos of Purim Tovshin Lamed Ches, when they prepared the Hanoche, in the Sichos, the Rebbe mentioned about something, the way we printed, the way we prepared the Hanoche, we wrote Machshire Mitzvah. There's a sugya in Gemara Shabbos about Bris Milah, Machshire Mitzvah, the knife, the things that prepare to the Mitzvah. Anyhow, and the Rebbe says, Vibavust, the Rashi, as you know, what Rashi says. I mean, who is supposed to know what Rashi says, which Rashi? And we asked the Rebbe, and this, surprisingly enough, the Rebbe asked, Lehatik mehatep shuris achodesh anal b'mtzon, please copy and send me in the few lines from the tape, the way I spoke, which this thing is in the middle of those few lines. I, without thinking twice, I ran fast. I took my resume of the tape that I typed. I typed over those 10 lines, gave it into Rebbe without, I guess, the people had to look, didn't look, and didn't realize there was any difference. And the Rebbe circled around that word-for-word transcript from the tape, and he writes, I didn't say machshire, I said Hirshel Mitzvah, and he zeichen that the Rashi is in Yevomis,
That's the way you wrote it. That's the way you wrote it. You wrote Hirshel.
No, we by mistake wrote Machshire. We had no clue because obviously we looked in Masechta Shabbos.
No, I'm saying in the Hanach of the transcript of the tape, you wrote Hirshel.
And the tape the Rebbe said, but we didn't pay attention.
Right.
There's a Machshire Mitzvah. I'm sorry to say that Marat says Hirshel Mitzvah was a mistake, but the Rebbe kind of must have been surprised. I got to see what did I say, and we gave it in. The Rebbe says here he circled around. I said not Machshire.
So in the transcript it did say Hirshel.
He said properly, and then the Rebbe,
and
the Rebbe said, "This is the Rashi I referred to, Rashi in Yevomis, you know."
Mm-hmm.
A few of the interesting things. The Rebbe,
who is writing all of this? David Feldman.
Yes, this is those years. Everything is throughout all the years, besides a short time that the Rashi were written by Rabbi David Odot.
So who's writing to the Rebbe all these things?
Yes. In the Maimorim it would be Tzvi Greenblatt, Rabbi Tzvi Greenblatt. In the Sichos would be Rabbi David Feldman. Of course, sometimes we talk it over with Rabbi Yale or with other people. Again, he would only ask questions that you can't write. It's basic things. It's negated to the biur. Talking about the Rebbe's corrections. There's also very interesting Asach Helike Sachen. The Rebbe is a Heliker Mensch. Besides everything, the main thing is the Rebbe is a Heliker Rid. And for instance, here was a Maimer, Shuva Yisrael Tovshin Mem. The Maimer the Rebbe was Magia, was not even given in double space, was given in single space, like kind of a Nocha Protis without Marmekemis, was written by Rabbi Elkan. And the Rebbe mentioned there the Posik, Onechi Onechi Humeche Psheecho, Lemani. The Rebbe wipes off the sins, and then it says twice Onechi, and then it goes Lemani. And there's explanation in Chassidus, what's the Onechi, and what's Lemani. When you copy a posik altogether, 2 words, why would you take them out for 2 words to write a gamer? So the way it was written, Onechi, hu mecheb shoecho, Lemani. It was twice written in that page. The Rebbe circled them around both and took them out. The 2 words, mecheb shoecho, he said instead, we should put in a gamer. And the Rebbe wrote on the side, bechivun leomartes. On purpose, I did not say those 2 words. If I may add a simple explanation, this was Rosh Hashanah. It wasn't necessary for the beer. Also, it was Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, you don't mention anything of in the davening of Enel Shenis of Shamnu, things like this. Chatoim.
There's a famous one also that Rebbe wrote, Mugdeke Maimer.
This is a Mugdeke
No,
Maimer.
but another one, but Moshe Rabbeinu, Pesi Yam and the Chaldava.
Yeah, that one's very famous.
Chevon le'amarti tevazu of Pesi and Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah. Which, again, how you're supposed to write a sentence, you can't blame people write. What are you going to write? Yamel Chaldovo?
Right.
What? But
Bechlal, in the Hanachos, the way it is, if the Rebbe quotes, a few words from a Chazal, they'll write the whole thing. In
not the whole. You write a minimum, a complete sentence, something.
That's the style of Hanachos.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think it would make a difference, even in Mugadike. As we know, by the way, another thing, as we know, that the Rebbe, we learned it from the Rebbe, when you make corrections, you do not erase the Ebershter's name. You circle it around and take it out. Also, the Rebbe never erased a name of a person. Even when the Rebbe would take out for other people, I've seen Tafshin Yudaled, we mentioned names, and those had all the stories, all the Sichos about Birum from the Rebbe and the Maimer of the Chasene. The Rebbe would take out names, he wouldn't erase them. Here is very interesting, a holy one, that the Maimer, the Rebbe wanted to take out the word Atzma Sumuhus. This is not the Ebershter's name that you're not supposed to erase. It's not a person's name. Atzma Sumuhus. What do we know what Atzma Sumuhus is? The Rebbe did not erase it twice. He just took it out, circling it around and taking it out to the side. Concerning, and this is something you say this is Kazakh, concerning Maramekemis. So the Rebbe's, sometimes the Rebbe would say, if you don't find it, whatever something, you got to take it out if you don't find the Maramokim. For instance, here I have a Mugdeke Maimer. This is the Maimer, I think, Tezvov Kislev. Tovshim Amalf came out the Kuntrasim Vachnos Sefer Terem Amalf. Over there in the Maimer, it says, the Rebbe says, as my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, writes, that also women are obligated learning Chassidus. Obviously, there was a number there, but in those years, there was no way in the world to find it. I think I went to Rabbi Weinberg and says he remembers that there was in Poland, whether it was in Atwotsk, somewhere, letters to Frierdiker Rebbe, but there was no way for us. It was much years before the Igros Kedish started coming out. Where are you going to go search for that? It was left empty, and the Rebbe wrote, Yeshne Michtov Nitfas El Bonis Berige Al Dvar Zeh. The Rebbe said there is a printed letter to Bnei Yisrael in Riga. That organization we know now. Today in Igros Kedish, everything is there. There was organization Bnei Chabad in Riga, and Friedrich and the letter was printed in those years, but doesn't mean anything. It still existed in our time, for sure not. Maybe in the Rebbe's library. But the Rebbe wrote, Bim leyimtzu, if you don't find the Maramokim, Yashmit, to take out the whole Ha'orah, and also the number. Don't forget to take out the number. Don't leave a number inside, which refers to the bottom. And then they wrote to the Rebbe, they found up a letter, a similar letter, something, but the Rebbe said, this is not what he's talking about, because he doesn't mention about learning Chassidus. It's a letter to the Bonis Beriga about their activities, but doesn't say that they're obligated to learn Chassidus. The Rebbe says, no, take out the Ha'orah. I would like to, since we're in Maramekemis, I wanted to go back to some technicals. We'll continue. here's a very interesting klolesdike instruction, a general instruction by the Rebbe concerning Maramekemis. In the Sichos of Motzi Shab Chaisoro, Tovshin Lametes, again it's from a tape, the Rebbe says there, he spoke about the famous moshel, the Rebbe calls it always the moshel of the liver, that thing that you lift, that you want to lift a building, you start from the bottom, then you could lift the top floor also. But the Rebbe mentioned there that moshel of lifting a binyan from the bottom, and he connected it with Chedesh Tishri. But the question was whether the source, what the Rebbe is referring to, is the famous Maimer in Teroer, in the beginning of Teroer, or in the Kutir Nitzovim, which it says differently. Over there it says, it doesn't say liver, it says a different word in jargon or something. So the Rebbe answered there as follows. He says, in Tziyunim Marmekemis, when you tzeichun and you make Marmekemis, says the Rebbe, there are several categories and there are several kavonis, intentions, what the Rebbe has when he tzeichun some Maramokim, or he says in the Verbringen. One reason for Maramokim, kipshute, mekeire bepashtus. You want to tzeichun, where is the source of what you said? Bepashtus. The second one is laharchiv ulahamik havonasayin al tziyin lemokim. You want to expand and deepen the understanding of by tzechening to a place that the Rebbe says in that case, not necessarily do I tzechen where it says like this, I could be tzechen to a punkt verkehrt, a shita hofchis, the opposite, which from there you could take out a detail or a klal, something addition. We all remember, and sometimes the Rebbe said the Verbringen that he on purpose Zeichen the Lekut Sichos Amaramokim, it says the opposite to see if people will catch. And there was something the Rebbe said, it's a very interesting thing, it's concerning about the Kitzurim. The Rebbe said something about a Chassidischen word and a certain explanation, and they asked the Rebbe that in the Kitzurim Voros Latanya, in the famous letter of the Rebbe printed in Sefer Kitzurim Voros Latanya, it says something differently. It wasn't actually the only time that we asked the Rebbe that here you spoke like this, and here you spoke differently. So the Rebbe answered, Ayin Ponim, there's 70 ways to learn Torah, and you people found in this case 2, and you're surprised there's 2. I remember a similar thing, the Lekut Lev Yitzchok, there's a Parsha Ekev, I think it's the first time the Rebbe was spoken on Lekut Lev Yitzchok. It was then the Rebbe's Magia, that piece was Tovshin Chovtes, Lanhoro, Lamshocho, Laroko. And the Rebbe said, Sabir, this is Kabbalah. Then another year, the Rebbe said differently, and we asked a question that says over there differently. And the Rebbe answered, kind of, if I repeat again, the same thing I said before, what's the point?
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Derher. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim is a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Derher provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Derher books, Derher online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Derher, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Derher, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying their hair club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Derher monthly magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Derher is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Her through your financial support as well, through visiting our website, her.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. So, bechlal, about it's a lot very fascinating about the Mekamis. The whole idea of Mekamis is the Rebbe's Chiddush. No, like it's like not a common thing. Maybe today it is, but definitely wasn't then to have Sfarim Mekamis.
Yeah, actually, not only the idea of making Mekamis is much the Rebbe's way, also the style how to zeichen Mekamis, like that you make the chapter, a comma, and then the posik is like Bober and people like this, more modern people that made the work properly. They are the ones who did, I'm sorry to say, in technical way, they did very good books when it comes to sources of things.
So what about ha'aris from the whatever answers from the Rebbe about like the signon and the way the Sichos are written and things like that?
The Rebbe wanted that anything written, it doesn't matter what he spoke. What you're writing is for people to read, to publicize. It has to be written well in an organized way, beginning and end. Things should make sense. And one of the things the Rebbe didn't like when it looked to him that what was written is kind of very close to a word-to-word transcript, even though this was written Lashon Kodesh. A few samples here, and one of the Maimorim that the Rebbe was magiet, but the Rebbe wrote on top that the Maimer is Signon Mavhil, Hatokas Milo B'Milo Mamash V'chulu, that the way it was written, the signon, the style of writing is shocking, and in parentheses, that it's practically copied word for word of the tape, I guess. Actually, that Maimer, because of the Rebbe being so sharp about it, even though the Rebbe was magiet thoroughly, we did not print it. We asked that time Rabbi Leibel Altein, he was involved for Sichos, to rewrite it. It was done, but it was given in again, but most probably the Rebbe doesn't have time to work twice on something.
So that Maimer was never put out with the Rebbe's Hagoyes?
I think later on in the Teres Menachem, they put it in the Sofes. They added all the Rebbe's corrections into the Maimer, the way it's written well. Mm-hmm. Some other Maimer, this is the Maimer in the Mamtir Lechem Nashamayim from Tovshin Lamed Zayin. The Rebbe kind of commented it wasn't prepared by Rav Yale. The Rebbe commented, V'loshna Kodesh Muzer, it's written in a strange Loshen Kodesh.
You're talking about my Marim at the Rebbe's Magia. This is a different topic than the Hanachos.
No, I'm talking Maimorim the Rebbe's Magia in the years of the Sichos, not in the project of the Maimorim which started in Tov Shimem Vov. I'm talking here and there.
So sometimes the Rebbe would take a Hanacha of the Maimorim and decide to Magia on his own? So
there was two ways. Yeah, it happened sometimes that Hanacha was given in, and lucky enough, we didn't think to give it in Magia. We didn't have the chutzpah. In that case, we would have to type it, kill double space, make it easier, make better Mekamis. But most times, we didn't do that. From time to time, if it was a special Maimer, Rabbi Yale would come and decide to write up the Maimer and give it into the Rebbe. Sometimes the Rebbe would Magia, sometimes not. But sometimes the Rebbe wanted to be Magia Maimer, were good or not good. He was Magia, but he wasn't so happy. And this Maimer, the Rebbe added the word Hanocha, but it was obvious that the Rebbe meant to be Magiat, and we did give it in, and the Rebbe put the date on the Pesach Dovo. In general, there's a lot of times that the Rebbe's expression concerning his Agos, the Rebbe would say that when I fix, it doesn't mean that was after I fixed, this is good. Like here's one expression and an explanation on Rashi that was written up based on the Rebbe's answers. And the Rebbe wrote, the signum, the style of writing is muzer funny. V'hishmateti, I took out, rak hamucha v'yeser, I only fix the most important, which means when the Rebbe fixes, it doesn't mean that the whole thing is completely good. I mean, it's mugadik, it's printed. Here's interesting of things that...
and this is referring to Hanachos that had some...
Yeah, this is Hanocha. Here's even in the mugadik, my moram, they were prepared, and according to the Roh of the Rebbe, beginning after Simchas Torah, Rabbi Gron had given over to Rabbi Elkani, was the maniach, that Rebbe wants us to give him in. The after the heart attack.
Yeah.
That they should give him in the Maimorim, the Sichos, and in the Maimer, for instance, Avram Zoken, Chaysor, Tov Shalamet Ches, in Yiddish, the Rebbe says, as this and this, Gita Ruiz de Meile, it brings out the specialty of Avram. The way they wrote it in Hebrew, they wrote Misbate Malose, it's expressed his Meile. And the Rebbe said on it, I mean, I don't know if Rabbi would have another way to write over those words in Yiddish.
In Lashon Kodesh.
In Lashon Kodesh. But the Rebbe wrote on it, Hanimtzo Lashon Ze Bedach. Did you ever find this expression? Misbate in Chassidus. Something similar, which we all know in a lot of the Maimorim, the beginning of the paragraph is V'zehu. Mm-hmm. And it's normal language. But here was a Maimer, Basukah stays through Tov Shemem, came out in Tov Shemem, that the Rebbe circled around in 2 paragraphs. Over there it says, V'zehu gam ha-shaychus. This is also the connection. Now, mind you, shaychus is Lashon Nekeva. But nobody wrote in a Maimer, V'zuhi. It's like, we're not used to it. But the Rebbe wrote V'zehu gam ha-shaychus, not V'zuhi. Why would I write V'zuhi? Usually Chassidus is V'zehu. But the Rebbe commented on the 2 times V'zehu gam ha-shaychus, in the 2 paragraphs, one after the other. He circled it, and he writes like this. Sugya shleima b'reish Kedushin b'chiluk d'Lashon Zochar v'Lashon Nekeva. There's a whole sugya in the beginning of Kedushin about the difference, something that is written in Lashon of Zochar Lashon Nekeva. V'lohem leich besklal. And to those people, they couldn't care about it. I'm sure at that time they fixed it. V'zui. It was very unusual to write in a Maimer V'zui. Listen.
I was going to say that you do see it, so I guess it was afterwards, after the story.
Mistam, it could be for also, but usually...
What happened? Do you remember what the Biel changed Misbate?
I don't remember. It could be checked right away
check in the Maimer, okay,
in the Maimer, but I didn't check at this moment. And one of the Sichos, now concerning the way to write a translation, and this is very important for today's day, where people are giving out supposedly a hanocha. A transcript from tape is something else. When you make a hanocha in Hebrew and you write word for word, here's what the Rebbe wrote, and one of the Sichos of our earlier years, I'm talking about Lamedvor of those years, Omarti bekama I said several times that the kavone, the intention of hatoka, of copying something, is sheyovinu techna-meduber. The people should understand the contents of what was spoken. V'lei diyuk behetek milbir. There's no point in being exact, copying word for word, which once you do that, b'meila ein ze klal sicha l'kriya, it's not anymore a sicha that could be read. It's rather a reshimas hatoka stavis, it's a list, a reshima where you copied words. It's not a sicha anymore. It's not readable. Umuchach, the Rebbe says, there's a must that you should translate chofshis, free translation, what's called. Validei zed, this has to be done by someone who knows the language and the digduk to write it properly, and someone who knows the language of michtovei Torah, writing things of Torah, not of newspapers.
What's the Lashon?
Yes.
What's the Lashon?
The Lashon amarti bekama pomim kavonas hatoka sheyovinu המדובר, ולא דיוק בהעתק מילה במילה, שבמילא אין זה כלל שיחה לקריאה, כי אם רשימס התוקס טייבס, ומוכרח שיותק חופשיס, ועל ידי זה שידע להק ודקדוקו וסיגנון מכתוב ותרא, ולא דמכתובים איתים. I want to go back a little bit to the technical part. In all those years from when we started Hanachos Atmim, from Tov till Tov Mem, till about Kislev Tov Mem, a good friend of mine, Aryeh Weiss, would be the typist. Those were typewriters, of course, till the end of Mem Zayin, 1987, there were no computers, at least that time started them as DOS, a different kind, but I'm talking about the regular. So it was a typewriter. He would sit, Hanachos were done in the day, he would sit the whole night or whatever it is, 12 hours non-stop, not getting up from his chair. He was a good typist. And then later on, the size of the Hanachos all the years was 8.5 by 11. And you would staple it in the corner. One time, sometimes the end of Tovshin Lamed Zayin, sometimes that time, Rabbi Avram Shem Tov had come back from Poland. He was sent there by the Rebbe to get out the Frierdiker Rebbe's library. When he came back, the library arrived later. The Rebbe went Lamed Ches before the Rebbe came out from 77 in Shchedish Kislev. He went without anybody seeing, just a few people to the library to check it. The Rebbe, Rabbi Avram Shem Tov met the Rebbe, I guess, by the room. The Rebbe gave him a matone, the Hanocha, the Maimer of Shabbos Matzumasei, with the Sichos and the Maimer. The Rebbe brought with Ksaviyat Kedesh, Baruch Hashem, Erev Shabbos Kedesh Chazon Tov Shalom Zayin, and signed his name. And the Rebbe told them, "Zos haben was zu reingucken Shabbos, Erev Shabbos." When we heard that the Sichos, which we didn't consider our Hanachos to be anything, we were kind of embarrassed. It was done for the people. When we heard that the Hanocha is so choshev that the Rebbe gives it and signs his name on it, we decided we're going to change the size, make it a more normal, acceptable size, not a page like this, 8.5 by 11, but a pamphlet. And the Rebbe was asked, to give it out. The Rebbe exact the Rebbe what size they want to make it, like the regular size of Likud Sichos, which is a little bit bigger than 8.5 by 11 folded, something like this, taken 8.5 by 11 folded. The Rebbe did not agree, but the Rebbe wrote something like, it seemed that the Rebbe agreed to part of it, but not fully. We already had asked the Rebbe, so then we decided to ask the Rebbe, and we wrote everything, the sizes, everything was written to the Rebbe, how it's going to look, and we started making it from then, which is from Shabbos V'Schanon to Be'ov, because we found out that information a little bit later. The Farbrengen started coming out in the size what's called a 6 by 9, actually. 6.5 by 9.5. This is all if you have not the Sichos Kedesh, you have the original ones that were bound in Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes, Mem, from the third volume of Tovshin Lamed Zayin. It's a different size.
So you were publishing Sfarim also then?
That's what's interesting. No, so by the end of the year, practically, people that bought by us the Hanocha, every time it came out, came up to us. They brought us out their single Sichos, and if they were missing something, if we still had it, we put it in, and we took all the Sichos, put them together. Practically, you would have the Sicha with the Bocher's name written on top on each Sicha, and we gave it to those Katz bookbinding, the famous bookbinding in Williamsburg. They did the Rebbe Siddur. They would do everything. You needed something nice with a hardcover binding. It was very expensive. Each book was done by hand. And we bound it for the Bochum. The same thing, Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes. After that, never was there a complete year. Lamed Tes also missing a little bit. But the Marmakamis was still done inside the Sichos in parentheses, which disturbs the reading, which, as everyone knows, Also, when you write the Maramokim inside, you can't write a lengthy or 2 Maramokimis. You have to make it as short as possible. It doesn't let
Why
you...
was that done? Because of typewriter? You can't do it on the bottom?
No, first of all, it wasn't easy. Look, when you look today, they're giving out now all the Sichos from the early years, the facsimilia. They, in Chelek Aleph Beis, after even the Rebbe was Magiyat, they typed everything, put in the Rebbe's Agos inside, till later started doing on the bottom. How do you make on a typewriter Hagos on the bottom? It's not easy. You have to calculate how much text to type on top, which means you first type up the Maramakemis separately, and you keep on typing the inside and keep on putting on the bottom your page, measuring, do I still have time to add another line inside so it should fit on the bottom? Mm-hmm. The Maramakemis were inside. At that time, happened to be after the Verbringen of Chavdala Tevis, Tov Shalom Ches, which the Rebbe spoke that time about Prime Minister Begin. And the Verbringen came out Hanachos at Mimim. A little bit later, the Rebbe was Magiyah the whole Verbringen. And we should give it out in a Madura Basra. I don't think maybe it was given over to us, not in print. So we retyped the whole Verbringen, took out the words Hanocha Satmim Biltumug on the cover. We added big words Madura Basra. And if I'm not mistaken, the Rebbe in that Sichos marked off that we should put down the Maramakemis. He put numbers, we should put them on the bottom. It was another Sichos like this.
I don't understand. So why was the Madura Basra?
No, the Rebbe, after it was printed already as Hanachos Atmim and Bilti Mugo, the Rebbe was Magiyah the whole Verbringen.
So Madura Basra, okay.
So, but we didn't give it in typesetting. I'm sorry to explain. We didn't do it typesetting like regular, like Sichos, 2 columns, whatever. We just retyped it on a typewriter, the whole Verbringen.
Why didn't you do like Sichos?
Maybe I don't remember now if it was there from the Rebbe that it wasn't, whatever, not always with things clear. Or sometimes, for instance, there were times the Rebbe was Magiyah a few Hagos, and a Maimer, and the Rebbe says, no, this is not to be printed. He called it the Rebbe was Magiyah provisorisch, means just von Ebenuf, not fully, just. Sometimes we used the famous saying, when a person gives you a finger, he grabbed the whole hand. If the Rebbe made a few corrections, we took the guts and typeset and gave it in. If we're lucky, the Rebbe put his stamp on it, and hey, you have a Mugdika Maimer. That one we retyped it, and we put the horse on the bottom, but we used for each one a separate line. Shortly thereafter, we decided that we got to start doing all the Hanachos with the Maramakemis on the bottom, but of course we made the Maramakemis typed consecutively, like 1 with the Maramokim, and then 2. And the same thing, we'd type up a whole page or 2 with all the Maramakemis, and Aryeh Weiss would keep on typing the Sichos and measure to see how much I have to leave to be able later to type up on the bottom what I typed already there. It should fit in. But there was also an issue, unlike the what's coming out now, the first Vamsel could see is tegen dag lachzer, what I can see is those green pamphlets. How did you make a number for a footnote? You had to type a number, lift a tiny bit the roll of the typewriter so the numbers go a little bit higher, but the numbers are very big. We couldn't have this, so we went to a printer, whether it was Empire Press or the Fusmayer, Yankiv Shlomo Goldberg, and they typed us up a sheet of numbers from 1 to 200 or to 300. We took that sheet and made very sharp, good photocopies of it. And then we had a machine called a waxer. We'd put in wax, it was plugged in, it would melt the wax. That's how the old Likud Sichos was done. How do you paste up the columns and the bottom the Oris? It didn't come like this from the computer till who knows when. So we would...
Saying if it's before print, it would be stuck on.
Yeah, sure. And figure out... the guy would have the whole roll of the Sichos on his shoulder. Take a look, how much fits inside, how much the other roll Maramakemis, where do I stop? And like this, kept on pasting it on. So we did the same, and we would have to cut the numbers tiny. Each number took up very little place, exactly no space. There's a special knife for that. And carefully take that number with our finger with a nail and put it on there and press it down hard. It shouldn't fall off. And by typing, we didn't leave a whole space empty. We would leave, you go the typer there halfway back to leave enough space. If it's one number, two numbers, and like this, the whole Sichos. And of course, if you sometimes later, after it was printed or even before, if you weren't careful, the number would fall off and would end up having a Sichos. It actually happened once. This was a interesting story that...
1 second. The Hanachos started having the Mekamos at the bottom?
Yes, from that verbringen on, right after the happened the story, the Rebbe's Magir of Dal Tevis Lamed Ches. So we started making small pamphlets in, as I said, in Tovshin
That's the way it's printed.
Lamed Zayin.
In Sichos Kedesh is printed like that?
Yeah, the big pages, they enlarge it, but of course it's like this.
Go look, okay.
Maybe some, but they already printed from a printed one, numbers couldn't fall off, but the original was a problem.
Okay, so what happened? So the number fell off?
No, it happened one, happens. It happened once, a Sichos, that the Rebbe suddenly, Chof Cheshvan, Tovshin Mem, the Rebbe asked that he wants to be Magir the verbringen. The verbringen yet wasn't written up. It was written up, the whole Hanachos was written up by Rabbi David Feldman, typed, but by the typist, he was only up to like the first 10, 15 pages, and as it is, the Rebbe didn't want to wait. We gave him in the part that was already, a photocopy of the part that was already typed up, nice, and the rest was a double space, the way it is typed with the Mekamos inside, and the Rebbe actually magired the whole thing, but we didn't realize, we wouldn't even think it was Narash. The Rebbe said we should give him right away, Rabbi Gon, the name of the Rebbe, that the 10, 15 pages that were given to the Rebbe, the typed ones, the verbringen wasn't finished, so there were no numbers there. There were footnotes on the bottom with numbers, and the Rebbe wrote there, Lei nisman b'fnim mokem atziyunim. It's missing inside the Sichos where belongs the number. We didn't even realize that, or even if we would, we couldn't hold it back to do it.
Because you do Mekamos at the end.
No, but before he starts
the numbers are put in later.
Yeah, the last thing, when you finish the whole Sichos, you start pasting in.
Yeah.
At the time there was...
That's how you do it today too.
What?
Today too. You wait to the last version till you put numbers on a footnote.
No, you could make before, then gets updated automatically, everything.
It gets complicated. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. It depends. If you work with Word, everything is automatic. One of the reasons I still work with Word, even though nobody does this, because it updates the numbers, it shouldn't be a mistake. In the other program, Tag, I don't know what Lahak uses today, Tag, when you make a double number, in Word, he has cross-reference. Mm-hmm. You catch the same number. In their program, sometimes you see there's a double number, which is the wrong one, because later numbers were added, and all the numbers got advanced, but this number stayed the wrong one. Okay, we'll go back... now, Mugedike Sichos, even before the contrasting of the winter, what we call contrasting, the Sefer came out, called Cheref Tovshin Lamed Ches, even before that, the Rebbe would from time to time be Magiya Sichos. When the Rebbe is Magiya Sichos, the Rebbe adds Mar Mekamos, ala Gillion, or on the pages what Mar Mekamos were by the end, and the way you add it is with a star, or with 2 stars, or with 3 stars. Then later you have to straighten it out. Actually, when you look in the Sichos in the time before computers, there are Mekamos with stars, because the Rebbe added, and there was no way to retypeset the whole Sichos because the numbers changed. It would cost too much money. But since you could always see in a Sichos, when there's a star, you could figure that the one with the star is not the horror the Rebbe added, but another one. They didn't want people to know which horror the Rebbe added. They would change around a few numbers, but you could recognize always which one is the Rebbe's, which one is not.
So the star...
But the Rebbe didn't like the stars.
Isn't the star like a ha'ara on the ha'ara?
That's a shule hagilion. On the ha'ara, a shule hagilion. There's no choice. Mostly it's 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars. But at least the numbers inside on all the ha'aras should be... The Rebbe insisted we should straighten out, take out the kechovim.
The Rebbe didn't like it.
Yes.
And
he didn't.
Of it.
What?
Because the Sichos is full of stars.
In those years, there was no way to do it. It was before computers. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about before, even when Word came out, when the word came out, I think, Tovshin Dalt, even when Emes Das came out, but still the way the Sichos were done, Emes Das looked like a typewriter. It spread it out. It wasn't typeset. Typeset was still done by a machine called AM Vare Typer. The machine costed $100,000.
So you're saying, Pasha,
it would be too much work.
Right, to redo everything.
But if there would be a lot of kechovim, I guess they would redo. So, for instance, and the Rebbe also, as all the years, the Rebbe knew there's nobody responsible He has to take care of all the technical things. The Rebbe could have known already most probably, but he didn't rely on it. So, for instance, Ma'im Chag HaOsif Mem Gimel, which came out Mugadik Ersh Tovshim Mem Zayin, the Rebbe had on top, Levatel HaKechovim, take out the stars, Ulahachnissom Beseder, put them in proper order.
As hard as
1, 2, 3, shouldn't be one with a star. Also, after the Rebbe was Magier the first time, Rebbe Yale would add more things based on what the Rebbe fixed. He would have to add this horror, that horror, and so on. So there was tons of stars. Like
asterisk.
What?
It's called an asterisk.
Asterisk. Yeah, gave it. Wie?
Yeah, you said it.
Good, Nushain. I'm sorry, I didn't go to Olatera, so I don't speak English. I never. And again, in that same mimer, which came out for Sukkot Tovshim Mem Zayin, the Kuntra Sukkot Mem Zayin, in the Pesach Dover, again, the Rebbe wrote, not Pesach Dover, in the paper attached, again, Levatel HaKechovim, again, remind us, remember, take out the Kechovim and make the numbers one after the other. There was a issue with the Marmakemis that especially
when the Rebbe's Magia Sichos was all done through Hanachos, basically.
Yeah,
the Rebbe has a seder with the Sichos that's separate.
Yes.
But then Hanachos, the current Verbringens,
yes,
that was doing it through.
It happened rarely here and there that they were busy with good Sichos. But it happened, Marshall, the Sichos of Shlomo Zayin, Chayel, the famous Sicha Batim Chetmimim, 80 years, Chayel Tov Shlomo Zayin, Nun Zayin, whatever it is, how many years, Tov Tim Chetmimim, the Rebbe spoke Meirnik Sicha, Mistame,
Lamed Zayin was 80 years.
80 years, Rebbe spoke Sicha,
I think.
Gadya Yoy, whatever the famous, and that time Rebbe Alten prepared it, so they prepared it.
So once in a while, the
if they would prepare, it rarely happened. They were busy enough. So the Rebbe would ask to, now the Marmakemis, especially when it was a Maimer Hanocha, the Rebbe's Magia, so the Marmakemis were very small, just every number was like a posik, a small Marmokim, and especially when the Maimer is a full column, it's not 2 columns like Sichos, it looks on the bottom, it's all empty, and the Rebbe didn't like it. He wanted the Marmakemis should go Bazeh Achar one after the other. For instance, Sicha Yud Sivan Lametes was a Yechidus to Talmidim from Bata Sefer Limlocha, going back to Tzrol. Not only did the Rebbe say, the Rebbe went to himself. It was the typed one before the typesetting. He went with a pen, attached every end of the previous hora to the next one. Every hora, like the 20 horas or so that were there, he attached them. For instance, even in the later Nissen Tov Shemem, Erev Shvishal Pesach. So, Gimel Nissen Tov Shemem, the Rebbe wrote, and the Horus, Zeh Achar Zeh, one after the other, consecutively, one next to the other, V'lei B'shuras B'fnei Atzvam. And then again, shortly thereafter, since the Rebbe thought he might not do it, the Rebbe wrote not in separate lines, if you're making it in format cotton, which means either you're going to print children's series, come out a little booklet, it's also wide. Then they had asked the Rebbe that what they're giving in is actually they're making it a regular wide format, like a regular Sofis and Sichos, a full width of 26 spikas, if you know what that is. And therefore, they asked the Rebbe, could they leave the Marmakemis like this? And the Rebbe says, no, since you're not doing in 2 columns, by 2 columns it doesn't look empty. actually, I think Tovshin und Dalet already existed a program for Word a little bit later that was called Hamesif. Word was a guy in Williamsburg. He would sell for them. He sells also the Eitzah Chochmah. A lot of these programs for years existed a program, but we at least didn't even have all the years that program. So the Rebbe wrote that since it's in one, not in two columns, so you should still do the marmekemis b'zeh chazeh. Now we're going to go to the so-called keta of the Sichos, the part of the Sichos the Rebbe spoke about Shleimus Haaretz or other topics, not directly Rashi, Biurim, Sichos, so on.
The worldly topics.
It started saying, Tovshin Lamed Ches. The first time the Rebbe spoke about, that they understood the Rebbe speaking about Eretz Yisrael, was Motzei Shabbos Lech Lecho. I think even a Shabbos before the Rebbe started speaking about building mikvahs, but it wasn't so. Anyhow,
before that, the Rebbe never spoke about general Inyanim.
Yeah, but it was, but not some. Look, in the years Lamed Beis, Lamed Gimel, every Verbringen, the Rebbe spoke about me Yehudi. But those things, first of the Verbringens, mostly didn't come out. And mind you, I don't even think Rabbi Yelkan by Chazor ever chazar those Sichos.
He didn't.
He didn't, and people that said there, when Rabbi Yel didn't chazar, nobody else was going to chazar in front of Rabbi Yel. That's obvious. When Rabbi Yel says, sometimes he stops, he would ask whether it was Yossi Hecht or what I'm talking about, even the later years, Shom Chatonov, David Feldman. Usually, Rabbi Yel would say, if he didn't chazar, nobody was going to say, okay, now this Sicha I'm going to say, this didn't exist. He was the chazer. They wouldn't have the chutzpah to do it either. And also the Rebbe started speaking about the Matzav in Eretz Yisrael, and that part, of course, would go in the Hanocha. By the way, in all the time later, this part could have been a half hour. There were times later on that the part about the Shleimus Haaretz was 45 minutes, over an hour. And even in the time when it was 45 minutes, sometimes it could have been that in quantity, in amount of pages, the Sicha about Shleimus Haaretz would amount to half of the amount of a whole Verbringen. But this was part of the Verbringen. We did it. Sometimes before Purim Lamed Ches, Rabbi Chodakov approached one of us and gave us over that the Rebbe said, obviously the name of the Rebbe, that what the Rebbe speaks about Eretz Yisrael does not belong in the Hanocha. To us, this was the end of the world. It's like it was a Gzeira Yuma, a decree that we're not going to put in big part of the Verbringen. So we asked him, how are the people in the world going to know what the Rebbe spoke? So he says, those that need to know will know. I guess he was referring to someone, Motzei Shabbos, calling, first there were recordings, but he referred to someone calling after Shabbos and giving over to Berke Wolf, which was the spokesman. And now we somehow kind of begged for life. We suggested that we're not going to put it in the part of Verbringen, but separately as a keta. Actually, this
what's it called?
It's called in every Verbringen. You go by the back, starting from Purim Lamed Ches on. You have the whole Verbringen. After that, keta Sichos. It starts from where the politics. I'm starting to call it politics from the Sichos and Shleimus Haaretz was there. And it actually, with the Evid, it helped because like this, you could finish the Verbringen much faster. You could leave the keta for a month later, when you'll have time. It didn't stop giving out the Verbringen. Interesting enough that already Chavdalet Tevis Lamed Ches, Sorah B'Tevis, the first time the Rebbe spoke Divrei Kvushin, and at that time already, the Rebbe was Magia, the part about Eretz Yisrael. But the Rebbe says not to put it in.
Yeah.
But we most probably thought that because it's a Sichos coming out, Muga, the Rebbe doesn't want the Muga to Sicha, that should be, I think we typed it up separately, as without the word Hanocha built to Muga.
The Rebbe spoke about Eretz Yisrael Divrei Kvushin a bunch of times.
Every time in the Mems, it was like there was sometimes by the Taneisim that the Rebbe avoid, like, because a Heiliger Tag is doch, but every time it was mamish.
So it was always like that. It was always separate.
Yeah. From then on, it started being separate in Hanachos Satmimim. When the Rebbe would add sometimes in Saviat Kedesh a piece, like they asked a question, they didn't understand, and the Rebbe would answer the reason also is because I didn't say everything, and the Rebbe would add a whole piece. And sometimes the Rebbe would give the instruction that this piece you should put it out in Yiddish, right up as normal part, because it's a major part of the biur. But on the other hand, it happened, for instance, in Motzei Shabbos Chaisor Lamates, which was a weekday Verbringen, and a paragraph was prepared, an important paragraph to the understanding of the Sichei, prepared based on the Rebbe's answers in Ksav. And that time the Rebbe wrote, Hare Yeshne, it's becama tape, exclamation marks. Several people have a tape. How could you add this piece of Sichei here? There's a tape. And therefore the Rebbe says, Kol anal, all above, you should add in a ha'ore, written, of course, in Lashon Kodesh, ha'ores, and bekitzel, because it's in a ha'ore.
I have a question.
Yes.
All these answers, you have them? Or the other people had them?
Everything written here, I have photocopies.
So you kept everything from then, basically?
What do you mean?
But the people in Hanachos got the Rebbe's Ksav or copies from the Maskiros?
No, they got always the Ksav Kodesh. Here and there, maybe something tiny, never even got to us, that the Rebbe was Magia.
So someone has all these answers.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, I have mostly. I have copies. Not everything. I mean, mind you, there were no copy machines. I don't have to tell you that. Maybe it is. Forget about Maskiros. When we used to print the Sichos ourselves, there was a plate maker, but it wasn't metal plates with negatives. It was a machine like a copy machine that had a roll of thermal paper, it's called. But that was not the regular copy, it used to be thermal paper. It's a kind of copies that if you open it up after a few years, it's gone all what was written on it. That's one issue. But for the printing, this was a heavier roll that you would make a picture of the page, and that you would put on the machine. But since that wasn't metal, it was only able to print a few hundred before it disintegrates, it falls apart. But that's too much of the technical things. Concerning the Pesach Dovos of the Mugdeke Sichos, used to be a style. We copied what was in the olden years. We type up whatever, and the regular lotion used to be that would be the paragraph B'Zeinu Mitzim Leir. We hereby give out this and this Sichei. The Rebbe said this and this Verbringen. Next paragraph would say that the Kvedesh Adam Shlita, the Rebbe added Ha'ores Emar Mekemis Haboy Mishul Agil, which come on the bottom. In Moshel Tovshin Lamed Ches, Basukis Teishru, which is the Maimon the Rebbe dated, we all know the Rebbe dated Shilhi Tishri. Usually a Maimon Sukkos, the Rebbe dated Erev Sukkos. At that time the Rebbe wrote Shilhi Tishri, and after that was Nebuch what occurred on Simchas Torah, the heart attack. But in that Sichei, the Rebbe
would give all the dates for all the Pesach Davos.
You tried to get the date, which here is, in order to give the date, you gave in the Pesach Dovo when you gave in the Gelis for the second time. But at a later stage, when it was only one ago, you had to remember always to give in the Pesach Dovo when you're giving in the first time. And therefore, much later Sichos, not from my time, and also not from Lahak, from Hanachos Satmimim, from the later years, some of them I could imagine that, I'm just guessing, that the date is not even the Rebbe's, because they never managed to give in.
In the Her magazine, when we have the dates in the Pesach Davar, in the editorial, so we always use a date that the Rebbe gave.
Oh, yeah.
Hirshel sends me a date every month before we go to
Oh,
print.
wow.
That's how we do it.
That's very nice. It's a bisschen heilig, schon heilig. I'm happy to hear that. And now must be the Rebbe took out that time the whole paragraph, took it out. Even though the Rebbe did put Horace Mamkevis, whatever reason he didn't want to write, and from then they stopped. But we stopped it only contrasting. But when suddenly the Rebbe was Magia Maimaril Mishpot Lamed Ches, unusual. So this is already not what they send in the contrasting. So we must have looked at another Pesach Dover, and that thing stayed again. Back then, for instance, by Purim Cotton, we realized that we took it out, but then later, here and there, because not always the pressure of work was that sometimes we didn't remember what happened when the work's so pressuring that when you're doing next thing, you forgot what happened yesterday because you can't still working Yoshem Chodesh Tetzio. This is the way it was. At the time later, I saw Pesach Dover already much later, Mugid Kesicha Tov Shimam Zayin, that the Rebbe corrected that paragraph. It said again, the Rebbe was Magia de Sicha, and Krisham Shlit Ormam Kemis, the Rebbe fixed as follows. He said, he took out his name, and he wrote, L'te'eles hakere, v'leimet, for the benefit of the reader and learner, the Maram Kemis come on the bottom. It's nothing to do to him. Several things about the Maimorim. I'm talking about before the project of the Maimorim. For instance, the Maimor Bosel Lagane Lamed Zayin was prepared according to the Rebbe's instruction. The Rebbe said the Maimor Shabbos and the Motzi Shabbos, and the Rebbe gave instruction that the Maimor inside should be the one that was said more bepirsum. Everyone was able to see and hear, and the Shabbos, the things he said Shabbos should be put on the bottom. And Tzvi Grimwald prepared it like this. It wasn't easy. We had to type up Pnim, bottom, and then the Maram Kemis on the bottom, calculate everything where this number goes for here. Like when you have Maram Kemis and Shchonoch for the Pnim, for the Maduro Basra, keep track. And we didn't think the Rebbe was going to be Magia that time. It was typed up regular in the small format, which was, the Maimorim were always like, it's called a legal, which is 8.5 by 14, bent in half, with the small size of the books of the Maimorim. And we were going to print it. It was going to be printed next day. I'm sorry to say, on my own, I had enough chutzpah. I ran, we had no copy machine, as I told you. I ran upstairs in the Kalel, in the back 770. I made a copy of those little pages. And without asking anybody's permission, I gave it to Rabbi Groner to give it to the Rebbe. Some kind of, we're going to print it. And lucky enough, next morning, the Maimer came out and it was Mugadik. So it was Zeiche to another Mugadik Maimer, not only that, the Rebbe gave out that Maimer to the Shluchim that were going Chav Zayin Shvat. The Shluchim Lamed Zayin to Tzvas, this was the second group of Shluchim, I think. It was Lamed Vov, Lamed Zayin, Purim Kot, Lamed Ches. I don't remember. Motzi Simchas Torah Lamed Ches, Rebbe, all those weeks the Rebbe spoke from the room. So Motzi Simchas Torah, there was a very obvious Maimer, Lohovinin Simchas Torah. Motzi Shabbos Breishis, there was no specific part of the Sicha that, the way it looks to my eyes, that was a Maimer, but Rabbi Groner gave over the name of the Rebbe that Rabbi should make a Maimer, and the Maimer is supposed to be based on the Erater of the Tzemach Tzedek, Parsha Bey, HaChedesh Zelochem, and that's what Rabbi did, and the Rebbe was Magia.
In those years, most of the Maimarim were Ken Sicha.
I mean, the Rebbe spoke just one thing, one long thing. There was no...
Right.
Maimer Ken Sicha, it's a different whole story. Maimer Ken Sicha was... what's interesting, that when the Rebbe started bringing, finally, downstairs, he started again saying Maimorim, Lamed Ches, I think Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes, even though before that there used to be Maimer Ken Sicha, because the Rebbe was proving that he's healthy. Even Likud Sichos, they weren't going to give in for Breishis Lamed Ches, but the Rebbe said they should give in. They thought that's it. It's going to be another break now after 2 years, like times before every 2 years was a break. Interesting.
That's your.
Mein Gefühl.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Everyone knew that that's it. Sichos.
No, I'm saying about the Maimarim. Why did Rebbe switch?
It's very interesting because later on the Rebbe went back to Maimer Kein Sichos. I've known this is heilige Sachen for people to say Hergeshim. It's not my line. Interesting. What's the Lamed Ches, which Rebbe spoke about Shleimus Haaretz? At that night, early in the morning, from Askiris, they called Berke Wolf. In Atzrol, he was the spokesman to the newspapers. And he was asked by the Rebbe's instruction to wait till he publicizes what the Rebbe says, because the Rebbe is going to add another part. The Rebbe wrote a whole bunch of Zettel Ksavet Kedesh, but most probably Rabbi Yelkan never got a hold of it. It's not the only thing that for some reason they didn't think they have to give it over to him. And it's not included, otherwise it would have been included in the Mugdike Sicha too. Maybe they found it much later. It was printed in the magazine.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidische Yomim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Iker needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidische Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have the set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidische Yom Tov.
So, after that, we know the Rebbe's Magi, Motzim Chastere, Breishis, Neach, Lech Lecho, Chaisoro. After that came the Maimer, Vayetze, V'shavte B'sholem, the long Maimer, one of the longest Maimorim. The Rebbe said it like a Sichos, it could be a longer Maimorim in speaking. I don't think so. But till the Maimer was ready by Rabbi Yale, was already kind of mekates. The Rebbe was already in my opinion, the Rebbe already started with publishing Tanyas, and that's when the Mugdike Sichos stopped. But then here and there was a lot of Sichos. The whole period of time when Rabbi Yale made the Kontreisim, the fellow went back to learn. He would be here and there to help out. I would sit and type for Rabbi Yale, so on and so forth. And then later, after the whole thing stopped, he came back and then started again. Built to time the Rebbe was mega. Now, Sorah B'Tevis, of course, I think the Rebbe, we're going to told that the Rebbe said we should give it in. That was first at night, was night from the room, was a Maimer and a Sicha together. Rabbi Yale made it, and it was not a Sicha, but Rabbi Yale was planning to make a Teichen. He didn't think the Rebbe wants to make the whole Sicha. And suddenly the Rebbe started with Magia. It's all, I think you could see it online here. The Rebbe said, Choser this. The Rebbe says, he just spoke yesterday, it's missing, till Rabbi Yale, or the Rebbe, now in the center of the whole thing. And it was a Sichos already built, has a structure, and you have to start adding Sifim, everything. And then, in that Sicha, actually, as I said before, the Rebbe took out the part of Shleimus Haaretz. A very interesting thing which we always know. It's not. I have one dogma, but that something the Rebbe said by the Farbrengen is Shchina Medaberes Mitich. Once you said it, it's holy. The Rebbe said was by the Farbrengen, weißt doch später Pshat v'chulu, kamen sich Dinge, a story of one of the Chassidim with the Rebbe, one of the Rabbeim. But you could see here, for instance, in the Rebbe had written in a Sichei, he put a ha'ara in Purim Kotel Lamed that it says, V'niflin nivamcho mikol ha'om. That's what the Rebbe said in the Sichei. And in the Pasuk says ha'adam. And then in the Maimer Ein Ches, the Rebbe made a ha'ara that in the Maimer Ein Ches, it says ha'om, and maybe it should say ha'adam or something, and then it's already printed. And the Rebbe had settled that Rabbim he'irodim, some were embarrassed that it has to be ha'adam. So the Rebbe wrote a ganze ha'ara to explain, going around and around, why be'emes, the pshat for the posik is the way he wrote, and so on and so forth. Once the Rebbe wrote, talking about the Rebbe being Magia, there were times the Rebbe asked to give in a Maimer. Many times, that many, that the Rebbe asked, it's completely holy. The Rebbe asked to give in a Maimer. We got the instruction whether by Rabbi Chodakov or and we gave in, and the Rebbe was not Magia. So, heilige Zach, we'll never understand what. For instance, Tovshin Lamed Ches, Rabbi Chodakov gave us over that the Rebbe wants to be Magia, the 3 Maimorim. I think it was 3 Maimorim, Lahuda Moiseir of Purim, Vachalta Mochel V'Saveya, of Motzei Shabbos Tzav, and Zeis Chukas of Parsha Por of Shmini. And it wasn't Rabbi Yale, Tzvi Grimblot. I think it was Tzvi Grimblot. We gave in those Maimorim, and they didn't come out. After a while, we didn't print it, we were waiting maybe the Magia. After a while, I walked over. Obviously, I did the dirty work. I walked over to Rabbi Chodakov, and I asked him, so he says I should write it down on the paper. My request, what I want. So we typed up a paper that, according to the Rebbe we received from Rabbi Chodakov, I guess, the Rebbe said we should give it to Maimorim, and we're asking what to do now. You have to be very careful. You write to the Rebbe. We asked the Rebbe, what should we do now? The Rebbe's answer was something like this: Did you already ask him what to do? Did you already finish learning? Everything came out till now, at least part of it. This is what it is. Yeah.
So it came out.
No, the Rebbe didn't give it out.
They came out building muga.
Yeah, then that's it. It's like all the times he used to ask a question, leitofasnu. That's the way the regular language. Right, the Rebbe, this is what the Rebbe explains, leitofasnu. The Rebbe would circle around the word leitofasnu and make a comment. He didn't understand. Ask him a chomesh l'mikra, he'll explain you. It was a time they stopped, even Rabbi and started writing a different language. So, not to get... but this is part of the work. A few... about talking about Mugdika Maimer, the Maimer L'chodedi, that today all Chasanim Chazal Tovshin Yadalad, this had nothing to do with came out Tovshin Lametes, the jubileum of 50 years of the Rebbe's Chasana. I was working the Sichos, but suddenly Rabbi Grona calls me, and he tells me that the Rebbe said that if someone will prepare and give him in the Maimer, he'll be Magia. I was going to ask... I ran to Label Altain. I asked him to write it up. Actually, we found out years later, whenever it was, that the Rebbe had Magia already, that Kuntras Yismi by the Bochim, a white printed Kuntras of all the built-in Mugdika Sichos connected with Chasana. And the Rebbe already had Magia because Shmerel Gorari from Eretz Yisrael, Reb Shmerel Gorari, which is a relative, a good close friend of the Rebbe, had asked the Rebbe. Someone asked the name of Shmerel Gorari. The Rebbe told that person he could ask himself. He could ask me, and he asked, and the Rebbe practically went and was Magia, not only the Maimer, the way it's written there, like a Sicha, the way the Rebbe spoke Tovshin Gimel, Tovshin Dalad, a beer, Parsha Gesetze, durch so a beer, and the Maimer Friedrich Rebbe. But we didn't know about it. There was already a ghost from the Rebbe. Nobody told us. And Walton wrote it up. The Rebbe was Magiat, and gave it out that Maimer. And actually, in the Pesach Dovo, it says over there that the Maimer is miyused on the Maimer of Peites. This was a beer on the Maimer of Chodedi Tov Reish Peites of the Rebbe's Chasne. But the Rebbe fixed in the Pesach Dovo, and he wrote like this. The Rebbe wrote over there, Kenire hu miyused. Like basically, it's not the Rebbe writing Dover. Mareches Chassidim. How do you know what's music and what not? You are writing with the Mareches Chassidim, are writing that we think it's not the first time the Rebbe did the same on some other mimer like this. Even though in the Mugadik, the way it was Magia at first, it said over there Biur, and the other part it said Biur also, that Sichos, Shvuis Yud Gimel, because this was obvious to everyone, but the Rebbe says, how do you know what it is? This is my mimer. Now, I would like to start about the Maimorim.
The project.
Project Lekut Sichos, project of the Kuntreisim.
So basically, the Rebbe, so I spoke to Hirshel about this, that over the years there were various Maimorim that were Muga. You know, the whole Chelik Aleph, the whole Malukut Aleph is basically those Maimorim, and then all the rest is the what you're calling the project of Maimorim from Tafshim and Vav, right?
Sure. Even in that first volume, I mean, Moshe Maimar Ach Begerel, it's very interesting. The Rebbe verbringt to Zion Tammuz right before sunset, before Shvasa Tammuz. And the Rebbe said a Maimer, and Rabbi Yale prepared it. And it was the biggest serus by the people that Friday night, I'm saying my own, it's more than a hergish, Friday night, in the back of what the Rebbe verbrings, they were doing Chazorah by Weinberg was chazering the Sichei, Rabbi Yelka was chazering the Maimer, the people were hooked over there to hear, and they were so hooked over there and standing and watching people chazering that the Rebbe came down early to go Kabbalah Shabbos. He walked in, and the people took time to realize the Rebbe is coming in for Kabbalah Shabbos. And I had a feeling that time that because of that, the Rebbe is going to give the Maimer. Actually, the Maimer came out after that.
Because what?
Because the Rebbe had so much honor,
seeing
that people are chazering, kochtzer in the Sichei, and the Maimer. My own this kind of argoshe. The Maimer tziyim b'mishpot was two Maimorim. The Rebbe was Magia. The Rebbe wanted it to get everywhere if possible for Tisha B'Av. I was upstairs. I wasn't working those years. It was tough shalom day, but I was there. It was a great in Vad, and they were printing. So I took one of those Maimorim before he had the dirty one that he measures to see if it's folding properly, printing in the proper place. So I had one in my pocket, a dirty Maimer with ink, and I was downstairs when the Rebbe came up from Kinnis and came out from the elevator, and he turned to Rabbi Groner, and he says, "Is the Maimer here already?" I was standing there, so I grabbed out what I had in my pocket. I gave it to Rabbi Groner to give it to the Rebbe. Later, they gave him a good printed Maimer, just saying. And then I went to the airport. We tried to find someone to try to get it somewhere in Canada. The ganze meiste not so simple. Shuva Yisrael Amid Vov, the Rebbe was Magia, even though it wasn't given in. It was like a Hanocha given in, but Rabbi prepared it. After that happened,
so you're going through Maimorim.
I'm going a few single ones.
Before.
But then the point is, the whole Amid Vov, in those years, only two Maimorim the Rebbe was Magia. I think Bosil Ganel Amid Vov, the Rebbe put a few comments, but it didn't come out as Hanocha. It's not printed as Mugadik. The whole Amid Zion.
It's interesting that look with the Sichos, there was like a Seder. I mean, obviously, look, the Sichos started and stopped, but there's a regular Seder how the Sichos were being Muga, but the Maimorim didn't have any Seder really.
No, but the Seder was only after. Sichos is to give in before to the Rebbe. I'll soon come to it. It's all ideal. Sichos is
different idea.
You're preparing from years ago for this Shabbos. Maimorim is after the Rebbe spoke. The whole Amid Zion, three Mugadika Maimorim. I'm talking everything that came out at the time. The whole Amid Tes, only two Maimorim la Mugadik. One Atem Nitzovim Chayel, the other one Atem Nitzovim Shabbos Nitzovim, which was only found, I don't know where, it's none of my business, was found after Gimel Tammuz. Tovshimem, only a few Maimorim were Mugadik. The whole Memalef, only one Mugadik Maimorim. I'm talking everything before the project of the Maimorim. The whole Membeis, altogether, one Maimer came out on a Pesach Dover on Gorenstein, the Rebbe was Magia the Hanoche, and only one more Maimer in the project. Now, we always tried, this was, tried to, after Ruiskriegen for Rebbe, to get out from the Rebbe should Magia something. I wasn't already working in the Sichos since Pesach time. I got married Sivim Amalef.
Yeah.
Since then, around Nisan time.
The Hanachos is a Bacher project.
Memalef. I was still involved in things, but I decided, since coming up, Siyum Sefer Torah Kloli, that's going to be finished by Besrivke and Isru Chag Shvuos, Mir eingefallen that maybe we should take the Maimer Lovening Siva Sevetera, the Rebbe said by the completion of Mashiach Sevetera, Erev Shabbos Tes Shvat, and give it in. This was a Hanocha of the style of Hanochas. I don't write Mamorim, I worked it off very much, and then Reb Shalom Chartonov fixed it. I typed it up and gave it in. A short while later, I meet Rabbi Groner. Rabbi Groner says, who is asking for the Maimer? And the Rebbe doesn't give out Maimorim. Who is requesting it? I never heard of anything like this. When someone has to request, the Rebbe once he gives out. What am I doing now? I went to Rebbe Minkowitz, passed away.
Bechlal, but you didn't realize that it was an interesting thing that you, on your own, gave it a Maimer?
Yeah. The Rebbe has a choice to give out whatever he wants, but
they never have. Usually, there's a goof that gives it.
That wasn't. I don't believe that was the issue. But why is the Rebbe suddenly giving out the Maimer?
Mm-hmm.
So I went, but I couldn't tell Rebbe Minkowitz what exactly is going on here. This is all things that today you could share it. They share everything today. And I asked him, I told him kind of something, what I asked from him was, I need an empty stationery of Bisrivke with your signature on the bottom. I need to type up a letter there. He looked at me like suspicious. What am I trying to, like something? He looked at me like, I knew him from before. I knew him well. But I kind of half words, and he gave me, I typed up a zettel in his name that he's asking the Rebbe the Maimer. Gave him the Maimer to the Rebbe, and to my luck, my mazel, the Rebbe was Magir the Maimer. Okay, we're preparing the Maimer for second Agor. Obviously, you write a Pesach Dover, and Pesach Dover, it says Bekesher. You ever saw the Pesach Dover?
Yeah.
Bekesher, Machnos, Sevetera, whatever, for Besrivka, Anan. The Rebbe gave out the Maimer. The Rebbe takes and cuts off the whole Pesach Dover, most of it. He writes simple as that, Bekesher, Chag HaShavuyos, Abolen, Letevo, and whatever the rest of it, Pesach Dover. Now, what I do? I asked Rabbi, what I do? I told Rabbi Minkowitz something, and I said, we decided, we're going to tell Rabbi Minkowitz, you get the whole Hakdosha for all the Kontreisim, is going to be the Hakdosha for the Sim Sefer Torah, and that was good enough. After that, I said to myself, look, if Shavuos is a Yom Tov for a Maimer, why not Yud Beis Tammuz? I had the Maimer by me. I kept copies of things that Rabbi Yolkan would give in other years, or which never came out, which I kept copies. I had the Maimer Satli Recha, which was prepared on the request of the Rebbe from the Tri Maimorim.
Tov Shelamed
Vav, the Tri Maimorim of Shabbos Chukas, the Satli Recha, Shabbos Chukas, Yud Gimel Tammuz, Vav Tammuz, which was prepared by Rabbi Altein. And I took it as it is. Marmikemis was so bad that at the time the Rebbe mentioned he was basing it on a Maimer. We guessed, in the Marmikemis, Rabbi Altein guessed, it was Tov Reish Pei, because the Maftech of the Rebbe's Maimorim, it says that the Rebbe Rashab wrote a Maimer on that Posik, the Kapitel of Rashab, when he passed away. But we weren't sure. But I just gave it in as is, and I went away. It was that time in the Catskills. I came back, and the Rebbe gave out the Maimer Mugadik, of course, and top he wrote the Marmikemis, Vachoser Behem, like exclamation mark, like, of course, I added all the Marmikemis were missing. I updated everything. Everything was already many minutes form. This is 10 years later. After that, I decided, if the Beis Tammuz Yom Tov could Chayel also, and then the rest is history. Rosh Hashanah, and all those contrasts when it came to Rosh Hashanah, because incorrectly in the Sefer HaMamorim Basel Lagan Chelek Aleph, you have the Maimer of Rosh Hashanah, the two Maimer Adenelom and Yom Shrosh Adenelom, and the Maimer of Sukkos and the Maimer of Shmetzer Simchas Torah, all not with the name Kuntras. The Rebbe was shown, I gave in to the Rebbe, I have it, a Sharblat, a big Sharblat, printed Kuntras, Rosh Hashanah Tov Shem Zayin. The Rebbe approved it, and actually was printed then, but by the printing machine of Hanachos Belahak, with the name Kuntras. The same thing was the Sukkos was printed name Kuntras, and the same thing Shmetzer Simchas Torah. But when the Vad reprinted it, because they needed to have the holy Asius, not the Frank Riel of the regular machines, so they changed the name the way they liked. Actually, by the time they printed the Melukat Chelek Beis, they already knew that this is what the Rebbe wanted. They saw the Rebbe's continue Kontraisim, And I think, and I spoke to them lately to one of those people, that they should put in all those memorim also that a sefer is not normal to start from its kislev. It doesn't make sense. I don't know, maybe someone reprinted, even though it's irrelevant because we have the Teres Menachem. And then the rest is history. Rebbe started being Magia. Of course, this was an addition to other work. I also worked for a living. It was day and night sitting with Rabbi Yale, mostly at night. Something later, I think in the late Tovshim Ches, Chaim Shol also helped me out, but I think most of those memorim, most of them I typed. I did the simple Marmakemis.
To be able to do it where would he do it?
He would write it. Wherever he had a place, where was he going to see it? Sometimes in his office, sometimes he practically came to my house. He came to my house, sat the whole night, not to be home. I was up with him just to keep him company. And the few little pieces of silver we had in our shafas, most probably didn't have doors with glass. In the morning, everything had to be shined again from anew. My kids had no clue. In the morning, they would ask, who is this old man with a white beard sitting here a whole night? But this is what it was.
They need to be shined, you're saying, from the smoke.
From the smoke of the cigarettes. The whole house was... Today, it's unacceptable. But Rabbi Yale needed two things to write a Maimer Sichos. He would need cigarettes and something to eat, which always meant sardines. Today, they don't even sell it in stores. I guess it's not so healthy. It's interesting.
It's actually very healthy.
You should take it talking about cigarettes, that
the sardines part.
After Chav Zayin order, he asked me once to buy him a pack of cigarettes. I said, no, now I'm not buying you anymore. Till now, I had no choice. I had to provide you cigarettes. But now, I'm not buying you anymore cigarettes. So, and like this, we worked all the time, put in a lot of time. It's something interesting. This was the Maimer of Chof Chesh of Ayom HaMachasa Tov Shalom and Zayin that came out of Shemem Zayin. This is also in Muluk Chilek Alv belongs under Kontreisim. As it said over there, on each one on the Pesach Dover on top was typed Kuntras Chof Chesh and Kuntras Sukkes, Kuntras Shmini Atzeres. On that one, on the Pesach Dover with the Gelis, the long papers that used to Rabbi give to Magid, those time was 11 by 17, folded in half. The Rebbe wrote there, Ein Azman Groma Lagia Maimer Eda Pam Ve'en Ledover Safe. There is no time to be Magid a Maimer again and again, and there's no end to it. And then there was another piece written there about something specific. And the Rebbe wrote that it seems that their opinion is that they have to explain in the Ha'aras of this Maimer every place in Chumash. It says the word Yediyah and the shit of Rashi and the Diyukim and everything could be explained. And then the Rebbe said also there's a Michtav Kloli from a year, question mark. In that letter, in the Ha'aras, is explained about the shit. At the time, I remember Rabbi Yale did not exactly know if he was referring to the Maimer, even that there is V'yadaito in that Maimer. Could be there was something else that the Rebbe used this Pesach Dovo to write. I never went to verify to find out. I wouldn't be able to either. They wouldn't tell me. From Tov Shemem Ches, I said Chaim Shol helped out a lot. We ended up one time, he said, it was some place in Montgomery. I don't remember. I remember the basement on Crown, close to New York Avenue. We sat there for quite a while. And sometimes in the Maimer also, is Yitzchok Uminer, Rabbi Yitzchok Uminer. He was a fast typist, a very young bocher, would help me out here and there sometimes, a few times to type. Now at the same time, when I worked in the Hanachos, I also, besides making the Marmakemis, I also typed the transcripts word for word. I believe the first time was sometimes Tammuz Lamed Hey, but mostly I started it from beginning of Lamed Vov, everything till the last day, 99%. A few of them were typed by my good friend Levi Garelik. He also knew how to type.
Transcripts of what?
word for word what the Rebbe's verbringen in order to make the Hanocha. The point is that after the Hanocha was made, at least by Hanochas Atmim and Hanochas Belhak, from Memalef, middle of Memalef till the end, when you finish the Hanocha, you have the Hanocha next to you, you rewrite, edit it properly. When you finish, you don't keep the transcript. Nobody thought it's going to come a time that people are going to want to learn Yiddish, sit to a tape, a video, and follow a transcript. Therefore, most of the Sichos that I typed 2 copies with a carbon paper, and everything went to the so-called Shemus. Altogether, I saved from those years like 2,000 pages. I happen to have a box, which means that everything, after Chav Zayin Oder, I started typing from Tovshin Yod Aleph, but by Tovshin Lamed Vav I should have had everything, but since I don't have anything, so I have to continue all the years further. Also, some people need it today digitally, but
there's tapes of all of this.
Yes, but you have to redo. When I sit and type, I remember that Verbringen, because I typed it then. And when you think about the amount of Verbringens in the mems, San Mem Aleph, Mem Aleph, Mem Beis, so I have everything finished till Lamed Ches Vad Bechlal. But the other ones have tons of them finished, but there's still so much work. When you think how much work there's still to retype.
So you've been going through all the Sichos.
I didn't do it anymore by order, just for interesting.
Why are you doing it?
First of all, the Rebbe Sichos have to be typed word for word. I'm doing all the Sichos for Lahak today. Also, but I'm doing it because I think one day people would like to have the transcript to be able to...
that's also like the Sichei Yemis. That's all from you also, right?
Sichei Yemis, I did for him all the years. Jam, I did all the years. Those are bits and pieces.
So you're planning on doing
I am continuing non-stop. It's tons of work for the amount of time. On the form of them, you have to have patience. It's not easy when you see a Verbringen. When a Verbringen is short, you could type it much faster because it's B'chinas Yisurim Sheyesh Lem Kitzur. You know it's going to take short, it goes faster. When a Verbringen is 50 pages in double space, 25 in single space, or 30 or 35, then Neshama geht always. This is only just writing word for word. From the end of Mem Zayin...
I tried it once just for a stam, an experiment. It's very difficult.
Yeah. From the end of Mem Zayin, I have to say, was already a computer, but after MS-DOS finished, it went over Word, I gave someone to transfer all the Sichos. Not all of them were transferred. Quite a bit of them I typed and they weren't transferred. But I have from the end of Mem Zayin quite a bit.
When is AI going to be able to do it?
I keep on asking people, and I do follow. I like to know things, even though it's not my level of, not my ballpark, but I like to follow, and I always ask people if you could do it from a tape, because it's interesting. I remember in the early 70s that by the airport used to be office, nobody sat there, and you saw a machine, it was called Date Matrix. There must be someone who was typing somewhere else, or speaking, I don't know, someone typing, and he was typing the message here in this office. And I always said, I wish it could be something for the tape, something else. A lot of them I have on paper, but you can't do it with that program because it's not so clear, and the amount of mistakes it'll make, it's not worth it to retype. It's not negated to this, but since you mentioned, for instance, all the weekday Verbringens from Yud Aleph till Lamed is 1,200 pages, 8.5 by 11 single space. Just Lamed Vov itself is like 700 pages. Lamed Ches, which you think the Rebbe spoke so little, like the Rebbe expressed herself, says, my man read not 7 minutes, what are we doing there in the office? The light is on the whole night. We didn't know, we didn't pay attention that the Rebbe has a window to us. And soon we found out the window she was by her sister, by the Rashag. We never paid attention, who's across the roof over there. When I heard from my brother reported, the Rebbe asked him, what's going on? The man verbringt just 10 minutes, why is sitting
Wait, you were sitting in the library?
No, in Hanachos Atmim, in the office.
And you could see 788 from the apartment?
Yeah, because officially the Cheder Yichud, Lebron's office, is a short garage. But we didn't pay attention of whose house this is. I never looked. My brother came and said that the Rebbe asked him, he told the Rebbe, it's my brother, that's irrelevant. But the Rebbe said, the man read 7 minutes, officially the Rebbe speaking 10 minutes after was there. So he explained the Rebbe was preparing a go. When I heard that, you know what I did? I'm sorry to say, next morning I went, we had no shades, I bought a shade, so the window should be closed. That's all I need. The Rebbe should get reported.
Reporting, yeah.
Yeah, reporting. So after that, Lamed Tes itself is like 900 pages 1 year. Lamed Tes Mistame is over 1,000 pages. So I took a little break, Ala Seder, and I started working only the Yom Pagras, which means by now I typed up all the Yom Pagras of the year, all days that are connected with the Rabbeim, all the Verbringers of days connected with the Rabbeim, in addition also Purim, also Asara B'Tevis, also Shivas B'Tammuz, also Lag Beimer, but basically on the order of the Yom Pagras, and there's a lot of other Verbringers which I did here and there. Still a lot of work. The Rebbe Shlomo Gam Kerch, Baruch Hashem. I work as much as I could to do it.
Okay, so you have more, or I have a question. I know you're also involved in the Mechtav and Klalim of the Rebbe. What was your involvement in that?
Since I was working in Hanachos, at a certain point, Tovshin Lamed Vov, Rabbi Groner asked me to come help him to work on the letter. The Seder was that Reb Nissen Mindel, the Rebbe would dictate to Reb Nissen Mindel practically a Sichos, what the letter should be. Actually, years later, when Reb Nissen Mindel, I guess, couldn't hear so good, they even say there should be recordings from him. And obviously, if I would ever get a hold of a recording like this, a letter is like 4 pages. If you take a Sichos half hour, you could make a nice, beautiful Sichos. I guess a meticulous is written for newspaper. And Reb Nissen Mindel would, I guess, type up the letter at home. He would add the introduction, like Shonatev, I don't know, Chayel, whatever it is. And then
he would do the English and the Yiddish?
1 second, no. So Rabbi Groner, the Rebbe would take the letter that Reb Nissen Mindel prepared, which was typed on onion skin paper, which means there was an original plus onion skin paper. But the Rebbe worked on the onion skin paper. And then again, the Rebbe's corrections, it depends how sharp the pencil were throughout all the years. Sometimes you would get a Sichos, you were able...
This is an original stencil with the Rebbe's Hagos.
This is onion skin paper, which is a thin paper, so you could type a few copies.
This is a stencil, this is onion skin. This is something
onion
else.
Skin paper, which means you put in a regular piece of paper, and then you put a carbon paper. You could still buy it in the store, maybe they still sell the carbon paper. And then another 1 or 2 of these, so you have a copy for the Rebbe, maybe of this Mindel. And the Rebbe always worked on this one, kind of not to ruin the original. This is one with a few corrections. Maybe it's not the first Hagor. But then you used to see sometimes the Hagos, you could even figure out sometimes where the Rebbe wrote the Hagos, whether it was written on a table that was clear for the Rebbe on top of a bunch of other things. And sometimes you see it was written from the way the pencil was. We knew it was written on the Rebbe's at home, which maybe the tablecloth was silk, and you see all the words are kind of broken according to the way when you write on something underneath,
right, it's soft,
which is silk, soft.
So you were typing. That was
so
typing.
After the Rebbe was magid, Rabbi Mindel would write up the dictation, prepare a letter. The Rebbe would magid it from top to bottom. You could see here tons of blikvul horrors. There was very little space for the Rebbe. And then Rabbi Groner would type it up. And then you had to make marmakemis, because the Rebbe would write certain things that leave empty. And you could see all along, I have many samples here, I didn't read them, that the Rebbe said, I already zeichen that at marmokim another time, I have no time to go look for it. So basically, the Rebbe would leave things empty. You should put in the marmokim where exactly the posik is. And Rabbi Groner asked me to help him. We went to the Rebbe's library.
Rabbi Groner would write the marmokemis?
He would type up the letter. He would have to fill in the missing marmokemis.
So he would kept that job always. The
I guess he had it before also. And we did that in the library. The library was before it was end of Lamed Vov, where Rabbi Ber Levin started organizing good library. But also library, you don't have like in a small room all this for him. I helped him a little bit. Then I remember, I think it was end of Lamed Vov. I don't remember. I was happening in downstairs where the magnet in the room, and the Rebbe walks out. And I see the Rebbe going home. In my calculation, the Rebbe was going to work on a Michtav Kloli. I see the Rebbe going home with 2 volumes of Likud Sichos in his hand. I think one of them was Chelek Daled, which has in the surface the Michtovim Klolim of I guess Tiltov Shin Chov Gimel. I'm sorry, I'm going to look a little bit at the notes. In that one, in Chelek Daled had Michtovim Klolim Vidal Nissen Chov Daled. Came out Chov Shin Chov Daled. They had the letter of Yimei Slichas Chov Gimel. Chelek Tes was sprinted Tov Shin Lamed Hey. It had all the Michtovim Klolim from Tov Shin Yud till Tov Shin Lamed Daled. Because Chelek Yud Daled with the surface of the other Michtovim Klolim was sprinted end of Lamed Ches. And then the Rebbe would come back. The Rebbe took it to make Marmakemis. He took the letter with him and he took the tus for him. And when the Rebbe would come back next day, you had the letter, the Rebbe would make Marmakemis. And for instance, on a certain thing of like Chayel, the Tziem Sgula, the Rebbe would say Epes Akuntres Chayel Tovshin Gimel, which was printed many, many years ago. Because in that letter, in Lekut Sichos, the Rebbe took home, which was from old year before the Sefer HaSichos, Tovshin Gimel was printed, I think it was Tovshin Chov Daled, whatever it is, or different things like this, which were, the Marmokim was like something that majority of people don't even have it anymore. Like the Rebbe wrote to us once on a certain Mugdike Sicha, with Seichen Dal Lekutes Sichos, wasn't yet a liquid, wasn't printed yet, and the Rebbe wrote on that, Nimmt so rak echot beweis shnai mishpoch, a famous expression. Who has a single liquid of Lekut Sichos? So it was suggested that instead of the Rebbe having to do this, that we should prepare the simple Marmikemis, Psukim, Chazal, the regular things that already the Rebbe has in other places, Zeichund, and type it up double space and give it into the Rebbe. And the Rebbe will add whatever Ha'aris he wants, whatever Marmakemis he wants. And that's how it started. We used to prepare and give it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would add Marmakemis. And then after the second typing, which is, that's when we did the Marmakemis. Concerning... by now, everyone knows that in special Maimorim, Yom Tov v'chulu, official Maimorim.
You finish it in Mechtam Klolim?
No. I want to mention, especially in Mechtav Klolim, we knew from here and there that the Rebbe likes in every Mechtav Kloli should be Shas Bavli, Yerushalmi, Rasha, all the Rabbeim, Zeyar, certain list of things that had to be there. Also, the Maimorim had to be all the Rabbi.
Where did this list come from? Just this. Yeah.
People knew Mustama that the Rebbe. You could see here and there in other places that people didn't think the Rebbe was Magi. He had it in some place in the Maimel Chodei, the Tovshin Dalet, Sabir. He had it in a certain place. Kimivur Drushat Tzemach Tzedek, without even saying where. The Tzemach Tzedek wasn't a Maimel. It has to be.
Always the Rebbe wanted this.
Yes, and of course, from a certain year on, also his father had to be tzeichend. Now, when you come to tzeichend a posik, a Rasha, a Gemara, you could find it. A Yerushalmi, you could also tzeichend the same Bavli, the way it's in Yerushalmi. When it comes to the Rabbeim, how many forms of the Rabbeim were printed? And with no mafteches, how do you find something? But we knew the Rebbe wants it. At a certain point, the letter was supposed to be given to the Rebbe at night before he goes home to work on it at night. But it was missing, after hard work, it was missing a few Rabbeim, especially the Rabbeim that don't have mafteches at those years. The Rebbe Marash, a few Rabbeim were missing. And a note was written to the Rebbe that we're still missing these three Rabbeim. And we were working on it at night, trying to find. The Rebbe, besides everything, as we all know, is a gentleman. By the morning when the Rebbe came, I was ready with a paper with the things missing to give it to Rabbi Groner, to give it to the Rebbe. But the Rebbe got it. But the Rebbe gave out what he had prepared. And over there, I have a photocopy of it, a little paper where the Rebbe wrote the names of all the Rabbeim and checked off which ones he already had, and then the Rebbe himself filled in the Rabbeim that was still missing when it was prepared beforehand. Of course, the Rebbe would never try his best never to erase what someone else did, put in those also. Like this, it used to be typed, and the Rebbe would fix it. We had to retype it till the third time. We typed it up nice, ready for the Rebbe to sign. In those years, the negatives, it was printed, used to be printed, letter used to be printed, either was small, it would be like this, or later on 2 pages when it became more marmikemis. And when the Rebbe had to sign the letter, in those years, the negative machines, the real negatives, I don't know why, but it wouldn't be able to pick up a blue signature if the Rebbe would sign with his blue pen. So they would give in the Rebbe a nice, easy flowing pen, a black one. This was the chazaka of Reb Sholem Jacobson, Olav Sholem. And together with the letter, Rabbi Grona would give in, the Rebbe would sign. But it happened that the Rebbe signed the original with his signature, but he still fixed a few corrections. What do? In the olden years, you see letters here and there printed, and you have a correction by hand. But in those years already, this wasn't acceptable. So we practically, if the Rebbe would fix a few words in a line, you wouldn't cut the Rebbe, ruin the Rebbe's original. Someone wanted to keep it. Not me, but someone wanted to keep it. And so we would cut it and type over this one line, and the way to tighten the space, you go half a space back, so you could add a few words. Sometimes you had no choice. From wherever the Rebbe's correction was, you had to finish typing till the end of the letter, retyping, and then put the Rebbe's, the last paragraph with the Rebbe's signature.
Copy paste.
Yeah, in the negative, not, you wouldn't run with wax the original. In the negative, they did that. Then at a certain point, and after the letter was muga a few times, now, Reb Nissim Mindel, at the same time the Rebbe was Magia, he already was writing the letter in English. He didn't have the Rebbe's corrections. After the Rebbe would give out the first time corrections, which were a lot of corrections.
Because he wasn't there.
He was in Long Island, he lived that thing. So Rabbi Grona would ask me sometimes to go on the telephone, and Reb Nissim Mindel didn't hear good. I would have to scream on top of my lungs, tell him the Rebbe's corrections. And then the Rebbe made more corrections. Therefore, when the English letter came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was Magiyat, one time I see on a letter that the Rebbe writes in it, and a certain words is circled around. It wasn't my job. He circled around the word, and he's asking to whoever is working that, whether it's Rabbi Nissim Mindel or whoever is working, he wants to know if this English word is the proper translation for that Yiddish word. I see Rabbi Klein, I said, I don't understand. The Rebbe could write whatever he wants. He said, you want to know the way the Rebbe works on the letters in English? He sits down with the final printed Michtav Kloli in Yiddish, puts it next to him, puts the English, and he compares them both. Yeah. That's why, this is what happened later, it's already in time of Rabbi Avtzon, Olav Sholem, the Rebbe's kind of commented, he's not a proofreader, they should do it all themselves.
What?
To fix the letter, he doesn't have to look it over, the English letter.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, then they had to attach the marmikemis, which had a caption from the inside, just with numbers. And then they would also do it in Hebrew.
Stopped being Magid English? Or something?
I don't know. He signed it. I don't know how many times it was Magia, but he wanted someone else to do things to the Rebbe was simple, a proofreader, which all the years was like this. I still remember in the time, talking about Gimel Amdal, they would give in things to the Rebbe that they knew, they didn't even look if there was any mistakes. The Rebbe was doing all the job to fix the mistakes. In the later years, when we didn't have time, we came right away, we started doing already typesetting. Why typing it on a computer? You could fix it, so we ran Empire Press. But we didn't have time to look it over. The Rebbe is going to Dale. So we would write on the letter that this letter was not proofread yet. We're doing it now. The Rebbe should know. There were times the Rebbe took it, was Magiyat on the way to the Ehel. And Rabbi Krinsky already had that time. It was a heavy, big telephone in the car. I'm talking about Zayin, or I don't remember when. and he would call me with some corrections.
What
And
the Rebbe did on the car on the way.
yeah, on the way. The same thing was they would write to the Rebbe that it wasn't looked over, that we're going to do it, like this. Then it started with the computers, and then again, everything was done under pressure. The Mechtav must come out at a certain point. There was one time that I even remember what it is. It's interesting. I think the Rebbe wrote something about Chasal Seder Pesach Kil Chosei. The issue was whether it says Seder Pesach Kil Chosei or Sidur Pesach Kil Chosei. In those years where we're going to look for these things, we know it's a choch, no computer, no nothing, or around the library, it would be impossible.
The Nusach HaGoda?
No, but we don't say that. It's no word from Friedrich Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe did not put in the Agada Chasal.
Right.
But the Rebbe made a certain comment, I think, about that.
You didn't have a Ashkenaz HaGoda?
I don't know if it's an Ashkenaz. You're telling me you know it's an Ashkenaz, whatever.
Yeah,
the way it says,
the
whether
Nusach,
it's Siddur Pesach or Seder Pesach. And the Rebbe left that he wants to put in a Maramokim. The letter, the Rebbe went to the Ale that day. The Rebbe was going back home soon. And
a Maramokim for what?
about this way, the way whether it's written Seder Pesach or Siddur Pesach. I'm sorry, we don't even know how to look for this. I'm sorry to say. And the letter has to be printed by the morning. The Rebbe is going home now, and this is missing. The Rebbe left 2 circles empty. Not having a choice, I'm sorry to say, I went downstairs in Ganei Tachten, holding the long galleys, hoping that Rabbi Groner is going to come out from the Rebbe's room before the Rebbe comes out, and I'll first give him the letter and tell him to go back and ask the Rebbe. To my mazel, the Rebbe walks out from the room before. I see the Rebbe walking out. I move back. Of course, I wasn't going to talk to the Rebbe. The Rebbe turns around to me. He asks me, "Was willst du?" So I said nothing. So the Rebbe says, "Bist du gestanden da?" I mean, the Rebbe saw that I came here with something, holding in my hands for something. I mean, obviously, by that time, Rabbi Groner must have realized some commotion going on outside in Ganei Tachten. He pushed himself through the Rebbe, and I walked over. I didn't talk to the Rebbe. The Rebbe standing here, Rabbi Groner next to him. I told Rabbi Groner, as he geblieben, a footnote was left empty. And the Rebbe turns around and tells to Rabbi Groner, I already gave it to you this afternoon. I mean, things were very hectic. He didn't have a chance. There's no rush. He didn't have a chance to give it over to me. But I knew it needs to go to print. I didn't know.
The Rebbe gave to Rabbi Groner.
He told him in the afternoon what to write here. I think it was about that or something else.
I don't understand the whole story because there's a mucker for this besides the Haggadah.
I don't remember if it was exactly. Yeah. No, if you write Seder or Sidur Pesach Il Chosei.
So what's a mucker for the Nusach Haggadah?
No, there's different Haggadahs that the way they say it has different Nakudas.
So the Rebbe gave a mucker.
I think it was that. I'm almost sure it was that. It could be, maybe it was already printed. Maybe I could check it up. I mean, it would be full amount of time to put into that. Anyhow, so then, but everything was done in pressure. Now, in the Michtovim, always the end of the Michtov Kloli, the Rebbe would always add the posik of the capital. If it would be 2 letters, it would be a letter of Yoder, Shchedesh Nissen, Auf Nissen, later came 3 letters, Auf Nissen. In the letter closer to Pesach, the
Rebbe's capital.
The Rebbe's capital. This, of course, was not in part of the dictation. Rabbi Mindel couldn't write it, and the Rebbe would add this and connect it as part of the brocha. I remember the Bochrim, I don't think those years already started the new idea of a new nigen or old nigen for the capital, but never decided yet which psukim they should pick for the nigen. And they would always wait. I should tell them what posik did the Rebbe write. Like this again a day earlier to have time. What did the Rebbe write? Which posik did the Rebbe write? Anyhow, but still everything is done under major pressure. I mean, I'm sorry, mind you. I mean, I had a job to work. I got married Sivim Amalef, and all this was done on partially on my free time the whole night. And I wish it would be at night, but it ended up a lot of times, for some reasons, ended up being in the middle of the day when I was already at work, getting a telephone call. come back, we need to do this, need to do that. But this is, I had a big schus. I was able to work on all those things.
You did a Tiltash and a Beis?
Yes.
Did you also work on the letters that the Rebbe wrote, like for dinners and things?
Rabbi Nissim Midel stopped writing Tov Shimon Ches. I think his wife wasn't well or some other reason. One letter Rabbi Groner prepared.
You talking about the Mechta
Yeah, I think Pesach Memches, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was based on a Verbringen, maybe the Rebbe told him inside the room. Later on, the Vad, some Rabbi Groner gave it over to the Vad. Sometimes the Rebbe would either, by Verbringen, you saw the Rebbe speaking a whole Sichos, like Vayakov Kudin and Aleph. You heard by the Verbringen already, he's dictating here a statement. It was very obvious, you felt it. Or they got paper and the rest is... And then, so Tov Shimon Ches, I think at a certain point, Rav Nissim Midel couldn't do anymore the so-called Mechtovim Klolim Protim for the dinners, all those things. So I also helped out technically. For instance, you had to, when the Rebbe writes a letter to Messiahs, to graduation, you have to see which school, when they're graduating, and their name should be spelled properly. The regular language of a letter usually is b'mayin al heidosom edos chagigas asiyum sheiskayim. Also, you had to change it, but different, because the same letter was sent to many different organizations.
So I was referring to longer letters that are written for like a dinner of a Mesid.
Maybe I'll get to it soon. So basically, a letter is based b'man al heidosom edos chagigas asiyum sheiskayim, and you look at the invitation, put in the proper date, because the same letter was going to different schools, different places. Other Chagis Hasim that already happened. One of them is Shiskayim Besmichos L'Chag Gulit Beis Tammuz, or Besmichos, whatever it is. And I mean, a lot. In answer to your question, a lot of those nusach of the letter is already from different years, and used to be the Rebbe's answer, Vazman Grom or whatever that time the Rebbe used to kochsech, whether it was the time the Rebbe kochsech about the Yom Tovim, including Kislev 3 days, Chazokah with Shabbos, different things like this. So I helped out there too, and but then started with computers. It was already computers, so it looked too nice, and the Rebbe didn't want to ruin it to be Magir, and I of course want the Rebbe to be Magir. So I saw from Rabbi Groner, I learned from him, even though I don't write like with such a breitkeit like him, but I would write on top of the letter in big words, had no stationery yet, and the Rebbe would know, but the Rebbe still was afraid. I saw one time the Rebbe was afraid to fix, just like, so even signed one time without the stationery. So I added on top in big on every letter, Hetek lehagor with 2 underlines. And then after the Rebbe was finishing it, we did the correction on the computer. Now we need to print it on a stationery. So Rabbi Klein wanted to give me stationaries of the Rebbe. I refused to take. I didn't want to keep stationaries of the Rebbe. I asked him to have only 3, because if the stationery gets stuck, when you put it in the machine to print, it's not regular paper. It was paper with watermarks, the famous fancy paper. So I only kept by me 2 or 3 pieces, and then I would give it to print. Now, how would I know if there's an event coming? So I worked, and I would come usually Shabbos before the Verbringen. I would see Rabbi Groner, and I would hear from him what are the different things. Is there a dinner or some event which I didn't keep up with? I couldn't keep up with the things that's going on. There was one time I came Shabbos, it was in the winter, and Rabbi Groner tells me that tomorrow Sunday there's a Hanachos Abayis at Lubavitch Yeshiva. I think it was Tov Shinun, I don't remember, this building on Crown Street, and there has to be a letter. I didn't know what to do. I said, I'll try my best. This is the first time a letter of Lubavitch Yeshiva of this style. We have from other years. And I didn't promise anything. I came out to Shabbos. I, Baruch Hashem, managed. I put it on the table that stood outside the Rebbe's door. Berke Yunik, my cousin, was sitting there that time. And I put it out. I think it was 11:30 at night. I didn't know of anything. About 2 a.m, my cousin Berke Yunik calls me that the letter came out. I come back at 7:70. I see the letter, and there's a little piece of paper upside down and written in it a big ches, which means chashoy or chadakov. Of course, I turned it over. I'm sorry to say. I take a look, and I see there a letter from the secretary telling the Rebbe that, and he didn't tell me that he's preparing a note relying on me. I told him I don't know if I'm going to manage. He never told me. He prepared a note to the Rebbe that later, when he left home, that later on, he told most probably Berke Yunik to attach it to the letter that Mitzurov was the letter to Hanachos Abayis Tim Chetmimim, asking the Rebbe if you could get back the letter in the same night in order to be able to, the Rebbe should sign it, we have to print it for the dinner. And that paper, I didn't see it. When the letter came out, I see the Rebbe writes, Niskabel v'chatzei salayla motzei Shabbos Kedesh. I received it midnight. Must be the Rebbe opened up the door to take stuff from the table. It was after 12 at night, which is a holy thing. What's if the Rebbe worked the whole night? What's the difference? But it's kind of a chutzpah that you're giving me, and the same thing was with all the Sichos later, in the time of Vadanoch Satmimim, in the Mugdike Verbringens, unlike Lahak, always came in late, and there were many times, sometimes the Rebbe clearly didn't magir. It was a matter of principle. After Chatzeis, I mean, what do you mean? You need it tomorrow morning, I have to work for you. And the Rebbe writes here, then the Rebbe says, if someone, if someone must have been mechadesh, wow, that tomorrow there's a Nocha 7 Apino, was this new? You didn't know it before? Question mark to exclamation marks, like you didn't know before. I mean, this is not to me. I don't mind if you get a sharp answer on the Rabbi. It doesn't matter. It's a schus. But this is talking about was
the Rebbe signed that letter?
I'm sorry to say, of course he did. Did he have a choice?
He did.
I'm sorry. I remember one time a letter was prepared, also like this. He was given it to the Rebbe most probably in time, and the Rebbe gave it out. He signed it. In the morning by dollars, this was Grossman from Migdal-Emek. I forgot his mazes are called, whatever it's called. Migdal-Er. And he passed by dollars. He had a dinner, I think, that day. Sunday, somewhere in Manhattan. I don't know, a rich dinner. And the Rebbe turns around, asks Rabbi Groner, did you give him, he tells me, did you get your letter? The guy says, no. The Rebbe turns to Rabbi Groner, and Rabbi Groner says, I'll give it to him later. The Rebbe says, now. We tried our best to...
He went out.
To work. Yeah, he went away for a short time by dollars, and he gave them the letter. We tried our best, everyone working very hard, including Rabbi Groner. I mean, this was a day and night job. It's interesting, the telegrams of the Rebbe, I didn't do them. Actually, for a bunch of years, Simon Jacobson did them. And there again, what they did is like the good olden times with the letters. They would take a telegram from a previous year, change the date, and telegram it says, it's toch Chagol Samech, whatever it is, and the Rebbe would add the posik. I don't know, I never figured out what happened. The last telegram of the Rebbe, which is Chanukah Tovshinun Beis. I don't know why. Rabbi Groner called me. It was the middle of the day. I should come and prepare. I didn't want to ask him why the guy's not doing it, whatever it is. I came back. I was working that time in Williamsburg. I came back and I prepared, based on what the Rebbe had spoken that time, a normal typed up without the Rebbe having the posik we know already from different Mechtovim. And it was a normal telegram. that telegram, the Rebbe was Magia added tons of stuff. Actually, I have to say that's one thing I'm missing out, that I feel bad till today that I don't have a copy of it, because Rabbi Groner took it away right away. When we finished talking about the Rebbe's Ksav Yad, we had no copy machines. One time the Rebbe was Magia a shtickle Sichos, I think for, even was maybe a Zayin Tevis, a brocha to Bochim, that the Rebbe was Magia, and when we gave him the second Agor, there was a lot of the words of the Rebbe written away that you had to figure out only according to the Teichen, because it was so hard written off the corner paper. But it was a few words that time that, or one word we couldn't figure it out. With all the effort, we couldn't, so we gave him the Gelis, it was one page. So I suddenly get a telephone call, Rabbi Klein tells me the Rebbe wants to see his Agor, what he wrote. I grabbed fast the original. I barely made a wet copy, very unclear copy. I wasn't going to hold back, and I ran and give it to Rabbi Klein. Rabbi Klein called me a little later. He went into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe looked and looked and looked, and he says, I myself couldn't figure out what it says here, but the Rebbe wrote whatever he wanted. Like, he was surprised, and he wanted to see, what did I write here? Why can't they figure out? But this is...
Yeah, that happens sometimes, that people that writing the Hanachos couldn't decipher what the Rebbe was writing.
We mostly figured out in the later years after Gimel Tammuz. A lot of times things are printed kisviyad, and the people that are mefnei, I'm talking to people that know what they're doing, can't figure out. I had a shtickle chush in it. I remember times Rabbi Klein would ask me to help him figure out
For himself.
What the Rebbe wrote. I don't know how, but I had a shtickle chush, weißt doch, like the honey b'nei Adam. The chicken, you do kaporos, looks in the siddur. Yes, this is what it is.
Okay. Yashakech Rebbe Notik, thank you.
I'm not a rabbi, thank you very much.